Patrick Christie's tonight, 9 till 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, very good morning, good to see you. 6 o'clock, Monday, the 12th of February. You're tuned in to breakfast here on GB News with Eamonn and Ellie.
The election starting gun is to be fired tonight here on GB News with the Prime Minister's People's Forum answering questions directly from you.
More trouble for the Rwanda bill with questions over human rights obligations as it returns to the Lords today.
Yes, yet another headache for Rishi Sunak as the House of Lords raise human rights objections to the Rwanda bill later today. Find out more with me very soon.
2 more Israeli hostages have been rescued in Gaza overnight as Israel prepares for an imminent offensive in Rafah.
Portland residents in Dorset are calling for the government to take religion out of asylum claims and a rise of baptisms on board the Bibby Stockholm.
Ultimately, the Home Office is their job. It's not the job of the church to say, we think this person should or shouldn't stay in this country.
And later on, to buy or not to buy, amid Michael Gove's latest housing warning, we'll be debating whether it's better to rent or buy your home.
That after 7.
And in the sport, Arsenal embarrassed West Ham. Last gasp winner for Manchester United at Aston Villa, as there was in the Super Bowl, with the Kansas City Chiefs winning it for the 2nd year running.
It's a chilly start to the week, but with some sunshine around to compensate. How long will the sunshine last for? Join me later for the week ahead details.
It's Ellie and I together for the rest of the week. Well, until Wednesday, and then it's you until
Saturday.
Yeah, that's a long shift.
Yeah, it's the half-term
Lovely
week,
to see
isn't it?
you. Very, very nice to see you.
Good to see you too.
Obviously, we didn't sit up to watch the Super Bowl last night, and Paul Coit didn't either. But
I might have done. I might have done. I didn't, but I might have done.
You didn't need to. It finished when we got into the office.
I know, it was... The thing is, though, I tried to turn the TV on this morning. I couldn't get the TV on, and then I'm watching it online. I'm trying to find out what... And so I caught the very end. But, I like a bit of the... showbiz that goes with it, I've got to tell you.
I like the halftime.
You know, the halftime show was Usher, wasn't it? Mm. And then there was Taylor Swift, who flew over from Tokyo, which is like 14 hours, came off stage, flew over to Vegas, and then there was her and Travis Kelce on the afterwards, and it was all...
He's the boyfriend.
He's the boyfriend. He's the big beardy boyfriend.
They're great together.
Do you think so?
Yeah.
Why?
All-American, just this sports star. She's the... It's basically like the Royals in America.
Gotcha.
He's going for her because of who she is, or is she going for him because of who he is?
This is the best part.
Well,
Yeah.
the thing
Who
is,
knows?
the best part obviously seems to be the halftime entertainment.
Yes.
Because we're not too interested in anything else that happened. Though there are
We'll
people
try.
Yeah, we will. 7:20.
Yes.
Paul will be delving into that. Thank you very much indeed. But the time is now 6:03, and the first big election event of the year is 8 o'clock tonight here on GB News.
Yes, they're hosting a special People's Forum with the Prime Minister himself.
Rishi Sunak will join our very own Stephen Dixon and take questions from you in the audience on everything from the NHS, the economy and immigration.
So, what can we expect to hear from the Prime Minister tonight? Well, joining us now is our political reporter, Olivia Utley. Good morning to you, Olivia. And the election starting gun is going to be fired here on GB News at 8 o'clock tonight.
Well, absolutely it is. We've got a panel, a studio audience of undecided voters who are going to get to put their questions to Rishi Sunak. And I think it's going to be a pretty lively occasion. So make sure you tune in at 8 o'clock. Rishi Sunak is going to be put to the test on immigration, probably will be right up there on the list of voters' concerns. And as we know, the Rwanda bill is going through a difficult time in the committee stage at the moment. That is being analysed line by line as we speak, and I think lots of voters will be worried that some of those provisions in the Rwanda bill won't actually be implemented by the time of the next election. Does he have a plan B, Rishi Sunak? Well, make sure you tune in tonight to find out more. The economy will also be up there among voter concerns. We're expecting a budget on the 6th of March from Jeremy Hunt. Will he be cutting taxes? That's what voters want to know. By the next election, will we all have a little bit more money in our pockets? What will Rishi Sunak say to that? It's the first big election event of the year, and Rishi Sunak's going to be put through the ringer.
No, he certainly is. And for the people of this country, Olivia, what is your sense? What do you think matters to them ahead of this next election? Is it immigration? Is it the economy? Or do you think it's something else entirely?
Well, I think immigration and the economy will both be right up there. The cost of living crisis has hit people very hard indeed. We have the highest tax burden of the last 70 years still, even with that national insurance cut that Jeremy Hunt brought in at the beginning of this year. People are poorer in the UK than in the US, they have been for a while now, but also compared to some other European countries. What is the Prime Minister going to do about that? That is going to be the question on everyone's lips. I think immigration also is really, really important. Rishi Sunak is fighting a battle on two fronts here. There's the legal migration problem. There are about 700,000 legal migrants to the UK last year. He's been trying to sort of tie up a few loopholes there. Foreign students are now going to find it harder to bring dependents into the UK. The threshold, the salary threshold that one has to meet to come over to the UK has been raised, but still that number 700,000 is enormous, and people living in, particularly in sort of villages and in smaller towns, are worried that the public services just can't deal with that level of immigration. Then, of course, we've got what we hear about a lot more, which is the illegal immigration problem. That's people coming over here on small boats. And to tackle that problem, Rishi Sunak is trying to implement this Rwanda legislation, whereby people who come here illegally are sent to Rwanda to have their claims processed. As we know, that's not particularly plain sailing either. And I think that really is a big problem for voters. Most of the time, that comes up, the immigration issue, as number one concern for voters. It'll be really, really interesting to see tonight if that's where voters stand, or if another issue, the NHS, for example, is what comes up most.
Olivia, thank you very much indeed, and we'll be previewing that whole event throughout the programme today. So if you can, tune in 8 o'clock tonight. I was just looking at some figures last night about the crime capitals of Europe.
Oh, yeah.
And, oh, my gosh, France pops up everywhere.
Is it?
Montpellier, Nice, so many places in France. You think, oh, stay away from there. A couple of places in Italy. The top 3 slots for the crime capitals of Europe are Birmingham in number 3, Bradford in number 2. This is the crime index, but the town, or Preston City, Preston's a town, with the biggest crime index figure of something like 70% in Europe is Preston.
Is it really?
So why would anybody want to come and live here? And also...
So we take the top 3 spots.
And then also when it comes to taxation, we're by far and away the poor man of Europe. It's horrendous, with income tax, retail tax with VAT and whatever, inheritance tax, and the taxes go on and on and on and on. Not not only can you not afford to live in this country, but you'll probably be mugged as well, particularly if you live in Birmingham, Bradford or Preston.
It's a bleak picture, isn't it?
Isn't it?
So you're going to be taxed into the heavens.
But where would you want to live? I mean, if you weren't living in these little isles, which are quite lovely, where would you live? I'd quite fancy living in Portugal, I think.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah,
do you like golf? And the sun?
But I can't play anymore.
Yeah, it's
but
good for the sun.
I don't know. Well, where would you want to live? I wouldn't want to live in America.
No, wouldn't fancy that either for crime. Marbella might be quite nice in the sunshine.
Nice. Yeah, could be clubbing it every night.
Might be quite nice. Marbella would be quite nice. I'll leave that with me.
Palma's a nice place.
Palma, haven't been there.
In Majorca, have you not?
I haven't. It's on my list.
It's a nice place. Anyway,
let us know this morning. Yes, if you're dreaming.
Would you just prefer to live in the good old UK with all its crime and all its tax? 9 minutes past the hour. Well, we were talking about the Super Bowl, and it is watched by so many people around the globe, and it was on last night. This year, the Kansas City Chiefs have claimed a back-to-back victory.
Yes, won it for the second year in a row. But, of course, it's not all about the sports. The Las Vegas event is a celebrity and PR mecca, with TV spots selling for millions of dollars.
Well, Usher, as you heard from Ellie earlier on, led the halftime show. Taylor Swift and Beyoncé were there, and plenty of celebrity cameos from Christopher Walken, for instance.
Electric.
It's the real deal.
Yeah.
Did someone say yeah?
Don't you got somewhere to be? Yeah.
So why did you gasp there? Who was that?
That was Usher.
Usher.
And his song, Yeah. So he goes, did you say yeah? So that's why I giggled.
I wonder what they were advertising.
That's a good question.
Anyway, he said
BMW,
yeah.
apparently.
BMW, well.
But it is all about the famous faces in these ads, and you'll see some more in this one. This is Uber Eats, who also spent big on their ads last night.
When you used to be a pepper lady.
Wasn't it the Cinnamon Sisters?
Basil babes?
Paprika Girls?
No, that's absurd.
Jen. Hey. Okay.
Have we met?
Money to get the Beckhams and Jennifer Aniston on your
In
ad.
the same ad. And who was the man in glasses? Was
David Schwimmer.
Oh, was it?
Also in Friends.
Oh, yeah.
Funny you say that, because in that advert, Jennifer Aniston doesn't recognise him either. And neither did you.
Well, there we go. Let's go to someone I do recognise, Lucy Norris, Lucy, entertainment reporter. What did you think of what you were served up, Lucy?
Well, I think it was a spectacle for the ages. I think they really pulled it out of the bag last night in Las Vegas. As we saw there, those adverts were just the tip of the iceberg when it came to entertainment in the stadium. Taylor Swift did attempt to steal the night just by being there and having a presence, watching her boyfriend, Travis Kelce, but it was really Usher's night. As we saw from the beginning clip, he featured in adverts and also did the halftime show, which was 13 minutes of 30 years of a music career packed into one. It was feathers, sequins, rollerblades, celebrity guests, you name it, he did it, and he proved why he's been in the business for this amount of years. The guests that he brought on, Alicia Keys, he brought on will.i.am, Ludacris. It was something for everyone to watch, and this year in particular, the Super Bowl was spoken about perhaps more than ever because of Taylor Swift. She was there, as I mentioned, supporting her boyfriend, and she had a host of A-listers in her suite as well, from Blake Lively, Ice Spice, and Lana Del Rey too. So she really made sure that everyone knew who she was supporting for. She wore Travis Kelce's number around her neck and gave him a big kiss when he won on the field afterwards, making everyone's fairy tale dreams come true at the end of the night. So, yeah, it was really something to watch.
Lucy, well, I'm a massive Swiftie, so for me, last night was all about Taylor and Travis. There was a lot of drama, wasn't there? Because she was playing a show in Tokyo, and it was this big drama about whether she'd make it to the game in time.
Yeah, exactly. So before the Super Bowl, she'd done 4 consecutive nights in Tokyo as part of her Eras tour that's been going viral since the moment she stepped on the stage. And people were doing maths calculations. They were trying to work out if they would be able to catch a glimpse of Taylor. But according to reports, she made it back in time to spend one night in LA before she hopped on a private jet and made it to the stadium in Las Vegas around 1 p.m. over there, lunchtime. Just enough time to settle into her suite, get comfy, and get in some drinks as well before the game. She was spotted on the Jumbotron chugging back beer with her guests. So yeah, she made it just in time to enjoy the event.
Well, dare I ask, Lucy, with all that entertainment and all that spectacle going on, did you find any time, or were you remotely interested in watching the game itself?
I have to admit, I didn't watch all of the game. I was there for the halftime show myself. But I know that the presence of so many celebrities this year and the highly anticipated halftime show did draw in a lot more people than perhaps has been in previous years, just to catch a glimpse of people in the stands. And I know that since Taylor has been a part of the sport, it's gotten a lot more people interested. As far as I know, it was a very exciting game. There was lots of tense moments, and I do know that the Chiefs won, so that's something. But yeah,
that's all you need to know, Lucy.
Yeah, but it is
the end result.
yeah, but it is fascinating that you and Ellie as well would watch it simply for the entertainment, and you get excited about all of that, which gets me thinking. I'm a great advocate and supporter of the FA Cup here in England. I wonder, could we do the same for the FA Cup?
Yeah.
Could we glam it up a bit at half-time and all that sort of thing?
If you've got a celebrity girlfriend involved, I think we could see the same thing with football, because that's what's happened here.
I have a celebrity girlfriend.
Yes.
Yes, there you
Bring her along.
well, girlfriend may be stretching it a bit, but anyway.
Loving wife.
But it's interesting. I wonder, could we, Lucy, put the same optics on the FA Cup and do the same for an event in the UK?
I think so. I think you'd have to get someone with as much star power as Taylor Swift, one of our bigger celebrities. But I think if you make sport more accessible to everyone by adding in those little glimpses of their favorite singer or a performance they can relate to, then why not? Why can't we see the same success that we've seen by mixing pop singers with sport in America? I think it's tried and tested now, so all we have to do is implement the model.
Yeah, well, why not, as you say there. Lucy Norris, entertainment reporter, live for us this morning. Really appreciate your take on things. Thank you for staying up and watching it for us, Lucy.
Thank you, no problem.
Thanks, Lucy.
Thank you.
So you just need to take Ruth to Manchester United now, and it will be the same, same reception.
She used to go. I mean, when she was trying to catch me, she did. When she was trying to snare me, it was all, oh, I love Manchester United. Brian Robson was always my favourite player, and da-da-da-da. And she went a couple of times, and then that was it.
Oh, good for her.
Once she got me, she wasn't interested.
Ah, well, take her now.
Her attitude now is, off you go to the match today. Yes, you go. Yes, you just go out the door. That's me gone for the rest of the day. Let's have a look at some of the other stories we've got for you on this Monday morning.
And tensions are escalating again in the Middle East as warnings grow against an Israeli invasion of Rafah in Gaza. UK ministers say it would be potentially catastrophic for civilians. However, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he won't abandon the offensive, insisting there are enough hostages alive to justify a ground offensive.
Overnight, according to local health officials, at least 37 people were killed during Israeli airstrikes. It comes as Israel says 2 hostages have been rescued from captivity.
The government is set to block bonuses paid to water bosses whose firms pollute rivers, lakes and seas. The move comes ahead of public anger at bosses pocketing more than £26 million in bonuses, benefits and incentives over the last 4 years. The proposed ban by the regulator Ofwat could apply to CEOs and all executive board members.
The family of murdered teenager Brianna Gay held a vigil last night to mark the first anniversary of her death. Flowers, candles and a painting of Brianna were led nearby, with many people wearing pink in tribute. Her mother Esther was amongst many members of the community gathering to pay respects.
And the King has attended church in Sandringham for the first time since his cancer diagnosis. His Majesty walked alongside Queen Camilla and waved to well-wishers. Over the weekend, King Charles thanked the nation for their overwhelming support in his first public message since the diagnosis announcement.
The King's getting good use out of that overcoat that he has, that fawn brown one. See it popping up quite a lot.
I thought the same thing.
Did you?
We've got a fashion eye, Eamonn.
Yeah.
Yes, he's always in this kind of camel coat, isn't he?
Yeah.
Must be his favourite.
If a woman did that, it would
You wouldn't
be...
get away with it, would
She
you?
wouldn't get away with that, and it'd
No.
be like she's got nothing else in her wardrobe or whatever it is. But should he? Do you think he should be swapping and switching his coats?
Well, I quite like this look on him, to be fair to him. I think men get away with it. I think you're right. I think they're not held to the same thing as Camilla. Now, Camilla, always in something different, isn't she?
Yeah, that's a nice furry thing she's got in her head there.
It's good, but it's good to see him waving.
very well,
He's
yeah.
looking well.
Yeah, he is looking well. We hope he is well.
Yes.
The time, 19 minutes past 6 o'clock. The people of Portland and Dorset are calling on the government to take religion out of any consideration around asylum claims.
Well, it comes after it was revealed that 1 in 10 residents on the Bibby Stockholm are regularly attending church services like the King, and they are converting to Christianity in record numbers.
However, some churchgoers say they're not sure if these asylum seekers are doing it to increase their chances of success in their application for citizenship. Our South West of England reporter Jeff Moody with the story.
In an age where attendance at church is at its lowest ever, the Weymouth Baptist Church is bucking the trend. Sunday services are packed with residents from the Bibby Stockholm. Out of the 300 asylum seekers that are currently on board the Bibby Stockholm, around 30 of them, that's 1 in 10, attend church services here at the Weymouth Baptist Church. 6 of them were baptised last weekend alone. A conversion rate that's almost biblical in scale, or a cynical ploy to help their asylum claims. The people of Portland think the latter. Martine Summers is petitioning the government to take issues of religion off the table when it comes to asylum.
We are a multicultural country. We welcome all sorts of religions. It shouldn't be a consideration at all as to what religion they are.
Father David Palmer is a Catholic priest. He thinks it's wrong to blame the church for these conversions.
I mean, ultimately, the Home Office is their job. It's not the job of the church to say, we think this person should or shouldn't stay in this country.
In a statement, Weymouth Baptist Church told GB News nearly all the men with whom we have contact became Christians in their native countries, all of which are known to be hostile to the Christian faith. It is in no one's interests to have bogus baptisms, for such baptisms would compromise the integrity of the church, would discredit the gospel we preach, and worse, would dishonour the name of Christ. But GB News has learned that some residents of the Bibby Stockholm have been told their asylum claims are unlikely to be successful, and Portlander Martine Summers believes this could be dangerous.
Some of these men may have to go back to their own country whereby Christianity is persecuted. So is the Christian church happy that effectively they could be sending these men back to persecution? They could possibly have blood on their hands.
It's a complex issue. Dr. Gavin Ashenden is an Anglican bishop and former chaplain to the late Queen.
The problem then develops when the state decides that becoming a Christian or the criteria of religion is going to be instrumental in asylum claims and immigration claims. But having done that, it doesn't take the trouble to work out what becoming a Christian means or how you can test that.
In last week's PMQs, Tory MP Tim Lawton launched an attack on the Archbishop of Canterbury.
Can I ask the Prime Minister, given that the Church of England has now issued secret guidance for clergy supporting asylum applications for these Damascene conversions, who is the Church accountable to, and are taxpayers being scammed by the Archbishop?
The Archbishop has hit back, saying it's the job of the government to protect our borders and of the courts to judge asylum cases. The Church is called to love, mercy and do justice. 3 bodies, 3 distinct roles. The Home Office now says it will launch an investigation into those roles. Meanwhile, the residents of the Bibby Stockholm find themselves in the eye of yet another storm. Jeff Moody, GB News.
Thank you, Jeff. What do you think? Let us know, gbviews@gbnews.com.
Let's get a weather update for you now with Jonathan Vaughtry.
Hello there, good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vaughtry here with your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. Quite a changeable week of weather ahead of us, but we start with low pressure situated to the north of the UK. Wind circling in an anti-clockwise direction around that means we feed in some quite cool polar air from the northwest. That air is also streaming in some showers. They'll be most frequent today across northwestern districts, heavy around at times, even falling as sleet and snow over higher ground areas of Scotland, Northern Ireland, the Pennines as well. If you're further towards the east and the south, though, you're more likely to stay dry, a decent number of sunny intervals during the day, temperatures around 6 to 11 degrees Celsius, but feeling quite cold along coasts in the northwest where we have some blustery winds around, and they'll transfer their way northwards as we head throughout the night, some gales around coastal areas of Scotland over time. Some organised bands of showers just pushing their way across the country during tonight, but there will be clear intervals in between all of that, and underneath those starry skies, temperatures will drop off a touch, low single figures for many of our towns and cities, a patchy frost possible in rural spots, maybe some icy stretches in a few areas as well. But for many areas away from Scotland, we start off a fine day on Tuesday. A lot of sunshine in there as well, but we are going to see the cloud thickening from the southwest, outbreaks of rain arriving into southwest England, Wales, Northern Ireland later on as well. Turning windier as well, but they are coming from a southwesterly direction, which is feeding in some milder air. So double digits possible in the southwest, single figures elsewhere, but that milder air is going to push its way across all areas of the UK as we head towards Wednesday. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
Now, the actress Linda Robson, we were talking about getting boyfriends or partners earlier in the programme. Taylor Swift and who is it?
Travis Kelce.
Who?
Travis Kelce, who plays the Kansas City Chiefs, who won last night.
Oh, right.
So both of them are very happy this morning.
OK, so anyway, she says she's not interested in dating.
Oh.
Yeah. She's no plans to find romance. She told OK Magazine, I don't need a man. I've got my friends and my family. I'm not interested in dating. I'm too old now. I can't be bothered with all that jiggy.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay. There you go. Who's saying that? Linda.
Yeah, that's
Linda
from her
Robson.
book, Truth Be Told, Tales from a Baggy Mouth, which comes out on Thursday.
Well,
so Linda is 65, too old to find love. She says she can't be bothered with all that goes with it.
Well, see, I think 65 is very young. You could go on for another 30, 40 years. Would you not want
I would like to think when I reach that age, I would still be interested.
Yeah.
You know, but there we go. Maybe
sure
you're
you would.
different. Maybe you think she's got a point.
Yeah.
How old is too old? Now,
Let us know what you think.
let us know. So it's now your chance to win how much?
£18,000 cash.
I can't even believe you're saying that. It's incredible amount. It is the Great British Giveaway here exclusively on GB News. And here are the details you'll need to enter.
There's still time to become the winner of our Great British Giveaway. There's an incredible £18,000 in cash to be won. Totally tax-free cash that you could do whatever you like with. That's like having an extra £1,500 in your bank account each month for a whole year. It could go towards your mortgage or rent, buy monthly treats, or just send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. For another chance to win £18,000 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB02 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 23rd of February. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Good luck.
Up next, we've got Paul Coyte, not with 18,000 quid, but here with a very busy weekend of sport right after this.
Hi, Rishi here. As Prime Minister, I'm focused on delivering your priorities. So tonight, I'll be on the road to join GB News for a special People's Forum, where I'll be taking questions from a live audience about the issues that really matter to you: the economy, immigration, the NHS. See you there.
The Camilla Tominey Show, Sunday mornings from 9:30.
Questions to be answered, and there seem to be a significant amount, does once again point its way to a public inquiry into exactly what happened in this case. Starmer's called for that. Would you call for that too?
I certainly think that first of all, there's one thing that's happening now. The NHS have to order an independent inquiry. That's been done. So they've got to look at all the whys and wherefores of what happened with this man. If it appears that we're not getting sufficient depth and breadth to this, then I think having an inquiry with all the powers that brings would be extremely advantageous. What I don't want is some long-winded inquiry that will take years, by which time other people will have been put at risk and maybe other lives have lost. We know what the problems are here, Camilla. Law's been passed on this. This is all about making sure on the ground we implement the highest degree of monitoring in order to ensure the safety of the public.
Has care in the community failed? I mean, it seems oxymoronic to say that it's care in the community in this case. We know that the number of psychiatric care beds has been slashed from 52,000 back in 2001 to 24,000 now. I've anecdotally, because I wrote my column about this in The Telegraph yesterday, received quite a lot of correspondence from people saying the situation with care in the community is dire. People aren't being adequately monitored. Was it a mistake to close down all of those mental institutions?
I don't think we should go back to those days when we had those appalling institutions where we just lock people away and forget about them, and not just mental health people, but autistic people and disabled people. Horrific way to treat individuals, and you know I campaign on that a lot.
I know.
However, I think if we move into a more community-based approach, which can be really good for many, many people who are on the spectrum and on that scale of mental health, we have to remember there will be a small but significant number who will continue to pose a danger.
Okay.
And that's why monitoring is so important.
Super Paul with a Super Bowl now, and we've talked about the entertainment, which is what a lot of people tune in for, but there was a match.
There was a match, and it was apparently quite entertaining as well. It was, though. Kansas City Chiefs, it got to 19 each, and San Francisco 49ers were ahead. And Kansas City Chiefs, they're talking about, I'm just saying in English, a dynasty, or as they would say, a dynasty, and be the greatest American football team for probably 20 years. This is going back at least 20 years now. It's in 2003, 2004, and they've won 3 out of the last 5. They're the first to win back-to-back since back in those days as well. Patrick Mahomes, he's not to be confused with Eamonn Mahomes, who's the other quarterback that plays for the other side. Patrick Mahomes, I mean, they say he's the greatest quarterback there's ever been. He's the guy that's providing the passes, that's throwing the ball, and it was an amazing game and a Super Bowl that has been won by a dynasty, as they're saying now.
OK. Are Arsenal creating a dynasty? That game against West Ham yesterday?
I hope not. But it looks very possible. It looks very possible.
6 goals.
6 goals. I mean, what can you say about that? I mean, West Ham were very bad and Arsenal were very good. 4-0 they were up at half-time, but supporters were leaving at half-time. Had just had enough and walked out. And I was thinking, I mean, we were saying earlier, weren't we, about this earlier? Well, would you do that if you were 4-0 down away? Because Arsenal, this is the best away result they have ever had in the Premier League. West Ham, the worst they've ever had. And it's the worst in history, equalling something going back to the 60s when they lost 8-2. But 6-0 is the worst home defeat they've ever had.
It would only depend on my car and where it was parked.
Right.
And if it was going to take me too long at the end of the game and you're already 4-0 down, that's on the only circumstances. But I don't think I'd leave at half-time, no.
Yeah. What's the earliest that you have?
10 minutes. 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Because you're a Manchester United fan, so you're not used to seeing drubbings.
No, not really. And, I mean, I think you owe it to your team to stay there till the bitter end, but... No, I haven't. I must say I haven't done it.
It's difficult when the writing's on the wall. Well, I'm not really that into football. But my other half's a very big Spurs fan, very much like yourself, has been known to switch off the game if it's not going his right way. But I think if it was in person, it's different. You've got to be there.
And also, the thing is, I still have that belief within me, and it doesn't matter who they're playing. Even if you think there's always that thing that thinks, maybe... all of a sudden, if they get one and get another one back, and now they go... So at half-time, there's no way I would have gone.
Yeah.
I would have stuck around. But there's pictures, and you see thousands of people just streaming out.
That can't be good for morale for the team.
No,
either,
not
right?
at all.
They'll just see people leaving.
Yeah, of course. It's a really good point, because they're just thinking, what's the point? And David Moyes said, I take the responsibility, I pick the team, but the players have the responsibility. So he's taken a little bit. Often you get managers that will say, look, it's all my fault. But he's saying, yeah, it's my fault. Yeah, but it's theirs as well. It's also theirs as well. And also Manchester United, we should mention, 2-1 away at Aston Villa. Aston Villa, who were doing really well at home, now go and lose 3 on the trot, and they were unbeaten at home. But
Yeah, Aston Villa did play well yesterday. Scott McTominay off the bench made the difference once again.
Very good header.
You know, I went up to Manchester last week, Thursday.
Yeah.
And I was worried about being snowed in. There wasn't a single spot of snow anywhere.
So you're absolutely fine.
Yeah, but Scott McTominay came into the restaurant I was in.
No.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, so we had a good
Did they
chat.
bring him in, into the restaurant, so, with 5 minutes to go?
No,
football joke there, sorry.
No, he was... we had a good chat.
Did he come to you, then? I hope he did.
They all come to me.
Of course they do.
Aww.
Of course they do.
No, it was good seeing him. Good seeing him.
Oh, that's nice.
Bit of sad news now.
Yes.
Kelvin Kiptum.
Yes, Kelvin Kiptum has passed away.
He's a marathon runner.
He's a marathon runner, not only a marathon runner, but the world marathon record holder, and broke this in Chicago at the end of last year. London Marathon, killed in a car crash yesterday at the age of 24.
24,
in
goodness.
Kenya.
What a waste.
And it's unbelievable, and what a talent. And we'd spoken about when we talk about the super shoes and the world records that were going, and he broke Eliud Kipchoge. There he is with Sebastian Coe. This is like a world athlete of the year. 24 years old. Eliud Kipchoge, who is the other great Kenyan marathon runner, whose record he broke. And everybody was, including me, because I love athletics, looking forward to the marathon at Paris 2024 and for the Olympics, and just a horrendous waste. 2 hours, 35 seconds, world marathon record holder, and 24 years old.
Very sad. Very sad. Paul, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
May he rest in peace.
Yeah.
Still to come, going to go through the pages with the biggest stories of the day and making the news. Christopher Biggins and Dawn Neeson this morning.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Francis, Just Stop Oil have in the past broken the law. I remember distinctly the Dartford crossing. That ended up with 2 jailed, I believe, if I remember correctly. Is it ever justified in your view?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. I mean, I would have to say yes. I mean, we're trying to preserve my life, your lives, the lives of your family, and it's not just the planet that we're trying to protect, it's the lives of millions of people. And, you know, we know from history that we have to break the law in order to put pressure on the government and to be listened to.
No one would doubt your sincerity in your views. You genuinely believe in what you fight for. But there are others who think differently. For example, there are Islamist extremists who believe that people will go to hell unless they convert to Islam. They will sincerely, perhaps, break the law in order to force people to convert. In their view, they might be saving people's lives for eternity. There might be abortion activists who say that babies are being murdered, and to save their lives, we need to break the law to stop people having abortions. Why do you get to say that your moral conviction is the one that's right, and other people's individual moral conviction are those that are wrong?
So what's really integral to the Just Stop Oil campaign is the fact that it is a non-violent campaign. That's what separates us from the examples that you've just given. We're absolutely dedicated non-violence, both as a tactic and as a principle. So though we might be breaking the law...
If individuals take it upon themselves to break the law for whatever their course is, surely the way that we decide what society wants in general is democratic and within the law.
Well, of course, we know also that protest is absolutely integral to maintaining and upholding a democracy, and in particular, non-violent protest. I mean, I really can't express to you how severe this situation is, and I'm sure you know this.
Hi, Rishi here. As Prime Minister, I'm focused on delivering your priorities. So tonight, I'll be on the road to join GB News for a special People's Forum, where I'll be taking questions from a live audience about the issues that really matter to you: the economy, immigration, the NHS. See you there.
front pages on this Monday morning. Here's how they stack up.
The Daily Telegraph leads with the Defence Secretary Grant Shapps criticising woke culture in the army.
Times says that water company bosses causing pollution will be banned from receiving bonuses so that they can spend more on cleaning up the nation's waterways.
The Guardian reveals that international students are pushing to clear their name over English test cheating.
Daily Mail criticises Labour for backing up a candidate who blamed Israel for Hamas's attack on the 7th of October.
And The Sun leads with the King's first outing since his cancer diagnosis.
Now, here in the studio, we've got Dawn Neeson and we've got Christopher Biggins to debate those stories and more. And another front page, which we didn't show, which I'm going to come to in a second, is that on Saturday night, I was switching on my television and there was Porridge on BBC Two and... What's his name?
Ronnie Barker?
Fletcher.
Ronnie Barker?
Ronnie Barker.
Yeah.
Genius, absolutely brilliant.
Genius, yeah.
But sharing the billing with them and half the plot was Christopher Biggins. And I was very impressed. You must have been about 14 in that.
No, I was about 24, funnily enough, I think. I was very young, but it was a great series to be involved in.
Very, very good. He was so good. He was
wonderful. And also Richard Beckinsale.
Yes.
You know,
his
who
daughter
was...
Kate is devoted to me.
Oh, is she?
She is, yeah.
Is she?
Yes. What do you mean, is she? Do you not look at my Instagram account? Sends me all these messages. And
Does she?
She had her tongue in my ear.
Oh, excuse me, please.
New Year's Eve. It's there. It's all there. It's at Eamonn Homes. It's there. You go and have a look at it.
By the way, what you were talking about earlier, I would go to Australia.
What do you mean?
Well, you know, not staying in this country. Where we're going to live.
Australia's lovely, but it's far away.
Yeah, that's so wonderful, though. That's marvellous. It's a good way for everything.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a wonderful country.
Do you not need friends? Do you not need a bit of history?
Yes. The odd kangaroo we could get together with.
But then not only... I was watching BBC Two, then I flicked to Channel 5.
And there we both were.
There we both were.
Yeah.
On Tribute to Dad's Army, which is another magical series.
Yeah.
But then on my Instagram account, up pops this. Have a look. There we are. There's Biggins. Julian Tailforth and Biggins. So that's the front cover of the TV Times of the day. So what was the show? What was
It was called On Safari, and my catchphrase, which I came up with, was Safari so goody.
Safari so goody.
Yeah, and
I like your registration plate.
I know, big one, exactly, and how true that is. And what is interesting is that when we were talking about it, I said I just did a comedy series with Julian Tailforth, and she's the funniest girl ever.
She looks so good there.
And I said, honestly, we've got to have her as my Girl Friday, and they agreed. So she was wonderful. She is wicked.
I like your outfit there, Biggins.
It's good, isn't it?
You look like Steve Irwin.
Have you still got that outfit, Biggins? Are you still wearing that at weekends?
Right, Dawn, let's talk about the Defence Secretary. So he's talking about woke cultures.
Yeah, this is Grant Shapps has come out and said resources are being squandered promoting political agenda rather than actually sorting out the recruitment crisis we have, the lack of equipment we have, the fact that we've only got 2 warships but not enough staff to actually man them, and the fact that we have got conflict in the Middle East and in the Ukraine. But we are worrying instead about diversity and pronouns. And this is a leaked document that has come out called the British Army's Race Action Plan. And it notes that the Army is struggling to attract talent from ethnic minority backgrounds into the officer corps. Yes, they're struggling to attract people from any backgrounds, to be honest with you. And we don't know how much time and money is being wasted on this, but you know what, Ellie? I would rather someone be able to fight for this country. I don't care what pronouns they use. I would rather they have the equipment they need and the capability to defend this country. Because while we're worrying about pronouns and whether we're ticking all the right boxes, you can bet your life Putin isn't.
Well, the state of our world right now, you would think that our country should be doing everything in its power, really, to have a credible fighting force that our opponents fear.
Absolutely. I mean, they were talking the other day about conscription, because I think they're slightly worried. Of course, that's a very worrying thought. That our nearest...
We're too old for it, don't worry.
Thank God we are.
Not affect us.
We could be the new...
Dad's Army.
Dad's Army, exactly.
You already mentioned that one.
Yeah.
But you know what? Given the fact that we're ticking all these boxes, politically correct boxes, ageism could be one, so I wouldn't hold your breath on used to being called up, to be honest with you.
But Dawn...
And women will be called up as well?
I'm there, Al.
I'd be no good.
Everybody complains about woke culture, but somebody has got to instigate it. Somebody's got to put the stuff on the statute books, and that goes back to government, and it goes back to local councils, and it goes back to authorities like the NHS and whatever. So somebody's doing it. Everybody complains about it. Just stop creating it.
Well, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I don't know where this is coming from or how much it's costing, because those facts are actually missing from the story. This was around at the weekend, and it's obviously front page of the Telegraph today. And, you know, Shapps is getting very angry at it, but, I mean, it has to be coming from someone, as you say, connected to government.
Is that society? Is that what they think people want?
But isn't this like people these days permanently getting offended on your behalf, Ellie? It's like, you know, it's not me getting offended because you've misgendered me or, you know, you've been nasty about a middle-aged woman. I'm not offended. I don't care. It's people getting offended on someone else's behalf. Most people in this country just want an army that does its job.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a tiny minority, though, of people, isn't it, who push...
Well, we don't know. We don't. They're the ones that hold the power because they're the ones that listen to. I mean, if you want to be cancelled on this programme, we could all say something inappropriate, which we don't know to be inappropriate, and you're gone. Yeah. But listen to this. Here, the distinguished actor Ray Fiennes, right, who plays M in the Bond films, he says... He talks about trigger warnings, and he's saying there are very disturbing scenes in Macbeth, for instance, but I think the impact of theatre should be that you're shocked and you should be disturbed. I don't think you should be prepared for these things. No. When I was young, we never had trigger warnings for shows. So what do you think about, you know, before you go and see Macbeth or whatever, that there is a trigger warning before?
I don't want to hear about trigger warnings. I mean, I know what I'm going to go and see. Yeah. I know about Shakespeare, and I know what the play is about. And but I don't want to be told what I can or can't see. I want to make up my own mind.
What is the point in wrapping youngsters up? I mean, I'm assuming this is aimed at youngsters in cotton wool. Yeah. When the real life is not like that. Real life does not come with a trigger warning. No. Real life can be nasty. People can be nasty. You're going to have to face all of this at one point. So being warned that you can't... I mean, we've had warnings on kids' TV shows as well. You know, you might get upset by this. Well,
there maybe should be trigger warnings for bosses of utility companies, Biggins, and this is a bonus ban which will be implemented for the heads of water companies.
Well, this is really good news, I think, because, I mean, over the last 4 years, they've taken £26 million in bonuses. And it's ridiculous. I mean, you know, that money could have done so much.
Well, invest it into the waterways.
Exactly, investing into the water, which are in an appalling state. I mean, you know, and they just sit there. They must be on a salary, and then they take enormous bonuses.
For what?
For what?
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
so it's great that this has come...
You know, one thing I've noticed this winter, it has been wet. It's a very, very wet winter. Yeah. How long will it be before we've got hose pipe bans?
Oh, absolutely.
What, April or so?
Yeah.
And my point, Dawn, about that is there's definitely not the investment there should be into the waterways, into digging holes in the ground called reservoirs and holding this water.
Well, absolutely. Why not? You know, the £26 million in bonuses that the water companies paid themselves, why not invest some of that into the infrastructure that gives us clean water and takes the dirty stuff away, rather than pumping it into our rivers and our seas? It's not rocket science.
I was looking at a programme last night about ancient Rome. And they
this wasn't one Biggins was in, was it?
That was like Claudius.
That should have had a trigger warning. But basically, they were talking about how the Romans had instigated and built a whole structure of sewers under Rome. But what I did notice is that everything everywhere just poured into the Tiber. It all went into the river. But I was thinking, that's more than 2,000 years
Exactly.
And it doesn't seem to be much
We haven't moved on.
No. Yeah.
We haven't moved on. What gets me is they are allowed to put a certain amount of raw sewage into our rivers and sea. How is that cut-off thing?
As long as they warn people,
Yeah, as long as they warn people. How are you even allowed to put a little bit in there?
In 2024. Do you know the last time a reservoir was built in this country?
When?
1991.
It's a disgrace.
Over
Disgraceful.
30 years ago.
Nearly
Remarkable,
40
isn't
years
it?
ago.
Yeah, exactly. Let us know what you think about that one. gbviews@gbnews.com. Dawn, let's have a look at the English test scandal, shall we, on the front page of The Guardian.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is a Guardian story, obviously. It's on the front page of that newspaper, Dawn. But they're comparing it to the post office scandal, OK? The fact that overseas students 10 years ago now were involved in potentially a miscarriage of justice where they were accused of cheating in the exams they had to take to prove their grasp of English language was good enough to come and study in this country. Now, there were some that were involved in dodgy tests, but they seem to have spread it out so that 35,000 students were then accused. Many were thrown out of the country and indeed off their courses. Now, this is all going back to an inquiry again, and sort of like, you know, the students are demanding an apology and, in some cases, the right to come back here and study again. Horrible experience, right, if you're innocent and you passed your test and you're studying over and suddenly you're thrown out of the country. Horrible experience, but this does not compare, I'm sorry, to the post office scandal. There's no comparison.
Well, they're not facing criminal charges, are
No,
they? Not
exactly.
Put in time in prison,
absolutely. They're not in prison. 4 people took their lives over the post office thing, and no one has said sorry for it yet, remember?
No.
So it's a good story, and you feel sorry for the students involved that were genuinely accused wrongly. However, there's no comparison.
I'm looking, and there's quite a lot of stories today either about romance or hygiene, and some of them combine here. Dawn,
Where's he going with this?
Taylor Swift. We're talking about Taylor Swift flying to the Super Bowl. So tell people what happened to her, what was quite embarrassing.
Honestly, I don't know how this woman copes. I mean, I'd have been so stressed out. Right, OK. So Taylor Swift was flying from her gig in Japan to Las Vegas for last night's Super Bowl to see her boyfriend play. And in her private jet, evidently the toilet wasn't working properly.
Oh, dear.
Get this, first world problems, right? The electric seat wouldn't come down properly. The flush wasn't as powerful as it should have been.
No. Oh, but it was still flushing.
It was still flushing, but just not as powerful.
Thing.
I mean, come on, Ellie, where's your empathy here?
Well,
I mean,
my empathy would be if it didn't flush away what was deposited. That would be a bit embarrassing, wouldn't it? Who was in here before me?
Taylor Swift wants it.
No, listen to this, right, Biggins? The Mirror is reporting today that poor personal hygiene is a top turn-off for women. I can understand that.
Yeah,
and bad manners a top turn-off for men. What I don't understand is why men are happy to put up with
smelly women.
Yeah, smelly women.
Well, they're not. I mean, that's a ridiculous statement in the paper today. I mean, anything, any sex, whatever you are, a smelly person is not.
Oh, it's the worst.
It's the worst.
Worst.
I mean,
bad breath.
The worst.
Well, let's go a bit further.
Awful.
Yeah.
Let's go a bit further down. I mean, you know, just that horrible. Yes, all right. I'm not going to it. Feet, yes. Feet. But anything, you know, and there are people who don't shower every day.
Oh. Do you know, I'm like Prince Andrew from the point of view that
Where's this one going?
My feet don't smell.
Nor do mine.
Nor do mine. I could genuinely wear socks for 2 weeks in a row and it wouldn't make...
And me.
Honestly.
I'm exactly the same. I smell my socks every day.
Yes.
And there's
nothing.
Nothing. Perfect.
It's amazing because, I mean, because I've 4 other brothers, smelly pigs.
Oh, yeah.
All of them.
Yeah.
All of them. But it doesn't seem to affect me.
No, isn't it odd? I mean, nor me. We're very lucky.
Oh.
But you've got to, I think, whatever you're doing, I mean, you don't even think, oh, I'm going on a date, I must have a shower. You just are clean every day.
And you feel better for it.
Oh, much better.
Yeah, if you ever go a day or for some reason you can't shower for a while or whatever it is, it's awful.
Yeah. I mean, last week we spent a couple of nights in a hospital with a loved one who was on a trolley, so we were literally up all night. But the next day, I mean, you're right, you've not slept, so you're feeling rubbish in any case. But you actually feel that, and you haven't cleaned your teeth either, and that's the worst thing.
I know.
So how people just don't do that? They don't clean their teeth every day or have a shower?
I don't like baths, I have to say.
Oh,
well, there's a reason because you and I look, it's been 20-odd years since I've been in a bath.
And me.
Because you and I can't get in and out.
No, that's the problem.
That's the trouble.
Yeah, I mean...
Do you ever think of getting one of those ones?
No.
Have a little lift? You can sit in a seat. Apparently, you can sit in a seat.
I know.
And it moves you sideways.
I know. No. What's that thing like? Neil keeps asking me to ask you, will you put your feet on something?
That's about stimulating.
Is that good?
Circulation, but anything that stimulates your circulation, getting to your...
I'm not going near your feet. You don't change your socks for 2 weeks.
But it's what is it called? Neuropathy.
Yeah.
People, as they get older, have this tingling in their fingers or feet or whatever it is, and anything that keeps your...
Does it help?
Well, I found yes for what I need. I can't talk about these things. These are adverts.
Oh, right. See, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
But what about manners for you two then? 'Cause apparently it's manners that are the top turn-off for men. If someone's rude, doesn't matter if they're smelly, but it does matter if they're rude.
No, I quite like a rude person.
Do you?
What about people who snap their fingers at waiters?
Oh, no. That's totally... I can't have that. I've told people off if I've seen someone I don't know in a restaurant snap their fingers.
They say that the way you treat a waitress says everything about you as a person.
You know what? Why don't we just all treat people the same, right? It doesn't matter what job you do, whether you're the old cliche, whether you're the CEO or whether you're the person cleaning the toilets. Just treat everybody.
Well, you're a very nice person.
But they don't. People don't, though. People treat people appallingly.
I know. I hate that
Absolutely.
attitude.
And the other thing I can't bear is you go to a restaurant, you see a man and a woman go in, and the man takes the banquette looking out, and the woman has to look at the wall. I absolutely go mad at that.
You think that's a selfish thing?
Yes, I do think it's a selfish thing. I think the woman should always...
I went to a restaurant last week and I did just that. And I thought, this is a bit selfish. And then I thought, stuff it, why not?
Were you with your wife?
No, I did think about this. I've got a more interesting view.
I had the comfy seat.
Yeah.
You had the booth side.
But also had the view.
You had the view.
I quite like Dawn. Do you know what I like? I like sitting in a restaurant, and especially if you look out that way and the window's there, and you can see people walking up and down the street. It fascinates me, people watching.
People watching is very interesting. Personally, I just like sitting and gazing at my husband, so I don't...
Oh, Dawn.
Dawn, you're being so cute today.
Valentine's this week, come on.
She's feeling the love.
I even gave one of those looks. Oh,
No, I know it's a bad day for her. Six goals.
Do you know?
It's a bad day. It's a bad day. Yeah, I know.
What happened there, Dawn?
I don't know. I wasn't there. I was working, thankfully. It was my niece's boyfriend, who's a gooner. It was his birthday, so she took him in my seat instead. Yeah. So he, as an Arsenal fan, had to sit and watch 6 goals go in the West Ham end.
Yeah.
And sit on his hands. My niece wasn't happy.
Well, look, thank you both very much indeed. That's the initial take from Chris and Dawn on some of the stories making the news today. They're going to be back in about 45 minutes' time to do it all over again. Thank you very much indeed.
And just on the best places to live, because Eamonn was talking about that this morning.
Where would you move to?
3 of the worst places for crime are in the UK. So we're saying, where would you move to? Paul says he would choose to live in Hawaii. He's been there 3 times, very low crime rate, great weather, very friendly people.
Yes, but you've got those...
volcanoes.
Yes.
You've got that to contend with, haven't you?
Yeah.
Jimmy says he lives in Cyprus. He moved here from Northern Ireland. The weather is so good and he's loved it since. So do keep them coming in. Let us know where you would like to live. In the meantime, let's get the weather update here in the UK with Jonathan Bauntry.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vaughtry here with your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. Quite a changeable week of weather ahead of us, but we start with low pressure situated to the north of the UK. Wind circling in an anti-clockwise direction around that means we feed in some quite cool polar air from the northwest. That air is also streaming in some showers. They'll be most frequent today across northwestern districts, heavy around at times, even falling as sleet and snow over high ground areas of Scotland, Northern Ireland, the Pennines as well. If you're further towards the east and the south, though, you're more likely to stay dry, a decent number of sunny intervals during the day, temperatures around 6 to 11 degrees Celsius, but feeling quite cold along coasts in the northwest where we have some blustery winds around, and they'll transfer their way northwards as we head throughout the night, some gales around coastal areas of Scotland over time. Some organised bands of showers just pushing their way across the country during tonight, but there will be clear intervals in between all of that, and underneath those starry skies, temperatures will drop off a touch, low single figures for many of our towns and cities, a patchy frost possible in rural spots, maybe some icy stretches in a few areas as well. But for many areas away from Scotland, we start off a fine day on Tuesday. A lot of sunshine in there as well, but we are going to see the cloud thickening from the southwest. Outbreaks of rain arriving into southwest England, Wales, Northern Ireland later on as well. Turning windier as well, but they are coming from a southwesterly direction, which is feeding in some milder air. So double digits possible in the southwest, single figures elsewhere, but that milder air is going to push its way across all areas of the UK as we head towards Wednesday. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Lee Anderson's Real World, Fridays from 7 p.m.
Dr. Jane Jones, who's the clinical lead for Care After Combat.
Yeah.
Jane, thanks for coming. And just tell me a little bit about your organisation. What do you do?
OK, well, thank you for having me here so we can talk about Care After Combat. So we are an organisation, a charity, who work into the prison system, working with military veterans who've somehow got involved with the justice system and...
So there's quite a high population of ex-servicemen and women in our prisons. Why is that, do you think?
So 2014, the government did a review of who was resident in UK prisons, and what they found were that military veterans are the highest occupational group, and this obviously raises some concerns. Yeah. So the government wanted to do something about that, and so they supported Care After Combat initially just as a scoping exercise, really, to see if there was any way we could help these men and women actually, you know, understand the problems that led to offending behaviour and go on to lead successful lives.
So what sort of offending behaviour are we talking typically for people that's in prison that's actually served in our armed forces?
Primarily, it's violence.
Yeah.
So that is the highest offence that we work with.
Okay.
But of course, the military, as with everybody else, it's the full range of offending behaviour.
OK, so we're in a pub, Jane, Dr. Jane, and I guess for some people, you know, the odd tip of alcohol is good, a bit of fun of a weekend, relax, let your hair down. But for some people, alcohol is not always their best friend, and I guess that plays a part in some of your veterans that end up inside.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, speaking from my own experience, a good 2/3 of the people I work with have some kind of mental health problem or mental health difficulty, struggling to either adapt into civilian life or with some of the traumas they've experienced during service. People might self-medicate with alcohol to manage some of those thoughts and feelings.
Yeah.
Good morning, it's 7 o'clock on Monday, the 12th of February. This is Breakfast with Eamonn Holmes and me, Ellie Costello.
You're very welcome wherever you're watching or listening from. There you see the Prime Minister. You'll see him tonight on GB News as the election starting gun is fired. The Prime Minister is hosting a People's Forum answering questions, and those questions come directly from you, our GB News viewers and listeners.
Meanwhile, more trouble for the Rwanda bill today, with questions over human rights obligations as it returns to the House of Lords.
Yes, another big headache for Rishi Sunak as a group of parliamentarians say that the Rwanda bill simply isn't fit for purpose. Will it ever get through Parliament? Find out more with me very soon.
2 more Israeli hostages rescued in Gaza overnight as Israel prepares for an imminent offensive in Rafah.
A new campaign to fight fraudsters launches today. We're going to be speaking with the Minister for that, Tom Tugendhat, in just a minute.
To buy or not to buy, Michael Gove's latest housing warning. We'll be debating whether it is better to rent or buy in 20 minutes' time.
And in the sport, Kansas City Chiefs win the Super Bowl. Arsenal put 6 past a very sad West Ham United. And if you had a fiver and a horse called Absolute Steel yesterday and it won at Exeter, you'd be £1,000 better off this morning.
It's a chilly start to the week, but with some sunshine around to compensate. How long will the sunshine last for? Join me later for the week ahead details.
Well, the government's launching a new anti-fraud campaign today, and it's called Stop, Think, Fraud. And we're going to be discussing this because I think we would be surprised, Ellie, to realise how many people have been touched by fraud, affected by fraud, and unwittingly involved in it. And I think the thing, it's happened to me, and the first thing you do is begin to question people around you.
Oh.
You think, did I give somebody that number? How did they know that? I remember using that card. I gave that card to someone and go and do something for me. And you begin to worry as to how anyone had access to your account or your details. But
Makes you paranoid, it must do.
Oh, yes. But, I mean, the thing about the bad guys in all of this, they are very, very clever, and we are not, I suppose. And especially when you think of people who might be more vulnerable, might be older, mightn't be too frequented with the technology involved in a lot of this. You know, that's, we just got to think, and we've got to protect them. We've got Tom Tugendhat very shortly, who is the Minister for Security on all of this, and he's going to talk about all this. But one of the things, we go to Olivia Utley before that. One of the things we're going to talk to him about, Olivia, is this planned Israeli military attack on Rafah. This is a city in southern Gaza, and the thing about it is it's got over half of Gaza's population sheltering in that area. What have you got to tell us?
Well, it's a really difficult situation in Gaza at the moment. Gaza is one of the most populated areas of the entire world. And at the moment, as you say, you've got a huge proportion of the population sheltering from constant shelling in this one region. Now, Netanyahu is putting pressure on Israel to go ahead with this. The world now, we're seeing a different reaction from world leaders than we saw at the very beginning of this conflict. They are urging caution from Israel. The situation is getting more and more unsteady. It'll be really interesting to see what Security Minister Tom Tugendhat has to say. OK, well, he's now popped up. He is available. Olivia, we'll speak to you again very, very shortly. In the meantime, let's say hello, good morning and welcome to Tom Tugendhat.
Morning, Eamonn. How are you?
I'm fine, my friend. I'm fine. And we were just talking about the situation in Rafah, or the impending situation there. Oh, very noisy background there.
Very noisy Sorry, there's a bike going past.
Sorry, but, you know, as a government minister, I would say the first thing you should put on statute books is a ban on anybody that drives anything as noisy as that. But look, David Cameron, Lord Cameron, has already expressed a deep worry over what the Israeli military plan in Rafah. Would you like to add to that?
So, look, I think, first of all, we're all deeply concerned about what we're seeing in Gaza. I mean, the human suffering is really quite terrible, and the number of Palestinians who sadly lost their lives in recent operations is really very sad. But we've also seen last night the release of 2 hostages, which demonstrates that, very sadly, the Israelis have got a point in trying to rescue their citizens from this terrible situation. There's still some 100 Israeli citizens being held hostage now for well over 100 days. And this absolutely vile crime that Hamas committed on October the 7th is still leaving many, many families grieving, and of course many, many suffering, both Israeli and Palestinian. So I think we're all hoping that this will end, and end very soon. What we hope for now is a pause to get aid in, and the British government has been extremely clear in our aims to get aid and support into the Palestinian people, and to end the suffering as quickly as possible.
Tom, but the thing is, there's about 1.5 million displaced people in Rafah, and it's the gateway in and out of Gaza. Where the heck do these people go for safety?
Well, that's why we've got to get support in, we've got to get aid in, and you know, this is, as you know, Rafah is on the borders with Egypt, and the Egyptian government has been very important in supporting those Palestinians in need and making sure that those who need assistance can get it as quickly as possible. So this is something that the Israeli government and the Egyptian government have got to work on together, and the international community has a responsibility in making sure that this action whatever it is as brief as possible and commits, causes as little harm as possible. But the reality is we have seen terrible suffering in Gaza in recent months, all of it caused by this horrific terrorist attack on Israel that happened on the 7th of October, and all of it brought about by people in the Hamas leadership, billionaires living in different places around the Middle East, who think nothing of the lives of the Palestinian people and only about their own wealth and their own security.
Mr. Tugendhat, as a military man yourself who served in Iraq and Afghanistan, I believe you're still an Army Reserve officer. I did want to get your thoughts on the comments from Grant Shapps, the Defence Secretary, who says woke extremists are rife in the Army. I mean, right now, with the state of our world, the global angst that we're all experiencing, surely this country should be doing everything in its power to ensure that we have a credible fighting force that our opponents around the world fear.
Well, look, let's be absolutely clear. We're seeing huge instability around the world. We've just spoken about the Middle East, and Royal Naval ships are engaged in actions against the Houthis in the Red Sea. And we know that the vicious war that Vladimir Putin is waging in Ukraine could escalate and is absolutely horrific, costing many, many lives even now. This is a time when only our enemies want us to be divided, and we have absolutely no time for this sort of putting ideology before security. It is absolutely clear, and let me be totally clear, there is no way we are going to be easing up security requirements for ideological requests. That's simply not going to happen. The British Armed Forces have one purpose and one purpose alone, and that's to defend the British people and bring death to the King's enemies. There's no way we're going to be putting ideology before security.
Let's turn to digital security now, which is the reason you're here to talk about this. We hear there's been an almost eightfold increase in fraud offences. What are you planning to do about this? How are you planning to clamp down on this?
Well, look, Eamonn, we've all seen, sadly, an escalation in fraud. As more of our lives have gone online, I suppose it's in one way not surprising, but that doesn't make it right. And that's why we're working with tech firms, telecoms firms, the police, and with the Great British public to make sure that we're keeping everybody safe. Now, today's announcement is about empowering people. That's why we're calling it Stop Think Fraud, because there's various different ways in which we can protect ourselves and make ourselves a harder target. But this doesn't stand alone. We've also been blocking the various different ways in which fraudsters are attacking us. That's why working with tech firms to stop these SIM farms that send out spam messages is so important, and why we've actually led the world with our online fraud charter in getting tech firms to play their part in stopping fraud on their platforms. Now, it's also true that we need police support. And this morning, with your Cameron people, I was out at a raid in a home in Chingford where we saw an arrest on somebody who had SIM farms in their home. Now, we'll see what happens as the different processes of the law enforcement play their part, but it's absolutely clear that we need to be taking very clear action against this. We need to be making sure that we empower people, we block attempts, and we pursue those who are attacking us.
Just explain that to me again. You said they have what in their homes, did you say?
SIM farms. So those SIM farms are basically, if you like, an array of mobile phone masts, which means that your computer can send out multiple messages at the same time.
Interesting, interesting. One of the things, I know when you're talking to tech firms, just one of the things I would say, Minister, is why do they need so much information from us all the time? That, for instance, if we go to purchase something, you can't progress down the line to make an order unless you give your email, your phone number, just lots of things. I don't know about you, Ellie, but I think, what do they want to know that for?
Personal information.
Well, and then it means that somebody's got all this info, and then someone has the ability to maybe access, hack, or steal that information.
Well, Eamonn, that's where you've got to make a judgment, and that's why that information campaign that we're running today is so important. Because when we say stop, think fraud, what we mean is think about how people are collecting your data and how you're protecting it. Are you using the same password for everything? If you are, that's not very safe. Are you using two-factor authentication? Are you making sure, therefore, that there's an extra step? It's not just a password. Are you actually thinking, is this the kind of a site that I should trust, or is it a link that somebody has emailed me and therefore that I should be more careful about? So that's why all of these elements are about stopping, thinking about what you're doing, and thinking that some of these actions sadly may be fraudulent.
I can tell, talking to you, that you now think about this. This is uppermost in your mind, so it's
great ideas.
Yeah, I can tell that.
Yeah.
Ellie.
Minister, whilst we've got you, I wanted to ask you about a report that we've got out today from our reporter revealing that 1 in 10 residents on the Bibby Stockholm are attending church services and converting to Christianity in record numbers. Now, of course, this has all been thrown into the spotlight, hasn't it, with Abdul Azidi, who was rejected twice for asylum, accepted on the third time after converting to Christianity. There is this pray-to-stay loophole in the system at the moment, isn't there, Minister? Does religion need to be taken out of asylum claims? Because there are calls for that to happen.
So let's just be clear, that's not quite right. It's certainly true that all factors are taken into consideration in an asylum claim. That is true. What is not true is that conversion to Christianity is an immediate sort of, right to stay. That's not correct. It is one of many factors that put into place. And actually, I was very interested to read the former Archbishop of Canterbury, Lord Carey's article in the newspaper this weekend, where he was talking about the role that the Church of England has to play, not just in recognising conversions correctly, after all they are a missionary church, but also in recognising that conversion has to be real and therefore, what are the steps towards baptism and so on. Now, I think that's a matter for the Church of England, not for me, but I tell you what is a matter for the Home Office, and that's making sure that any fraudulent claims are denied and that all circumstances are looked at. So if somebody converts literally the day before their asylum hearing and after they've had several refused attempts, well, maybe that's a consideration that should be looked at very carefully.
And talking about refused attempts, he's Tom Tugendhat. He is the Minister for Security, and his message to everybody, Mr. Tugendhat, is stop, think, fraud. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Eamonn. Exactly right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, it's the first big election event of the year. At 8 p.m. tonight, GB News are hosting a special People's Forum with the Prime Minister himself.
Yeah, Rishi Sunak will join Stephen Dixon, and they'll both take questions from you in the audience. Let's go to Olivia Utley. She will tell us more.
Well, absolutely. It does feel like the election is starting tonight on GB News, with the Prime Minister being asked questions by an audience of undecided voters. They've been chosen by Survation, the polling company. We don't know anything about them. And they will be standing up and asking whatever they like to the Prime Minister, within reason, I assume. I think the topics which are likely to come up this evening are immigration, and we've got a problem with both legal and illegal immigration, both of which Rishi Sunak is trying to fix at the moment. Last year, there were almost 700,000 legal migrants to the UK. Rishi Sunak is trying to get those numbers down by, for example, curbing the number of dependents that migrants can bring over here when they come to study. And then, of course, what we hear about far more often, which is the small boats crisis, the illegal migration problem. Rishi Sunak is trying to fix that with the Rwanda bill. But, of course, as we know, it is coming through a lot of stumbling blocks in Parliament at the moment. The other issue, which I think is going to come up again and again tonight, is, of course, the cost of living crisis. We have the highest tax burden in 70 years at the moment, and people are really feeling the pinch. Interest rates are flatlining at the moment. Sunak is hoping that over the course of the year they will start to go down, and that should have a knock-on effect on people's mortgages. But for now, at least, the high price of electricity, of gas, the high tax burden is making people feel very poor indeed. Is Jeremy Hunt going to do something about that in the budget in March. He says he doesn't have as much headroom as he would have liked, but he does want to cut taxes. I think that lots of people will be really interested to ask Rishi Sunak what his plans are for that. The NHS, of course, is the third issue for voters. That is really, really important to people. The NHS is in a mess at the moment. Those long winter waiting lists mean that 1 in 7 people in the UK are now languishing on an NHS waiting list. Some of them unable to go to work because of chronic pain waiting for an operation. I think we're going to hear a lot about that tonight as well. Rishi Sunak is going to be put through the ringer in this first election event of 2024.
And you, thanks, Olivia, and you will be the people who are ringing him. So to speak, with that. So really looking forward to that. It really just sort of indicates, there was talk yesterday that there may be a May election, an early one. A lot of political speculation about that, but who knows? It will be sometime this year, and we assume that's the starting gun fired tonight. Now we just need Sir Keir Starmer for a similar event like that.
Yeah, we certainly do.
Let's have a look at what else is coming into the newsroom, and here's what we've got for you.
In the Middle East, tensions are escalating as warnings grow against Israeli invasion of Rafah in Gaza. UK ministers say it would be potentially catastrophic for civilians. However, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he won't abandon the offensive, insisting there are enough hostages alive to justify a ground offensive.
Overnight, according to health officials, at least 37 people were killed during Israeli strikes. It comes as Israel says 2 hostages have been rescued from captivity.
The government is set to block bonuses paid to water bosses whose firms pollute rivers, lakes and seas. The move comes after public anger at bosses pocketing more than £26 million in bonuses, benefits and incentives over the last 4 years. The proposed ban by the regulator Ofwat could apply to CEOs and all executive board members.
The family of murdered teenager Brianna Jai held a vigil last night to mark the first anniversary of her death. Flowers, candles and a painting of Brianna were laid nearby, with many people wearing pink in tribute to her. Her mother, Esther, spoke movingly, and she was among many members of the community gathering to pay their respects.
And the King has attended church in Sandringham for the first time since his cancer diagnosis. His Majesty walked alongside Queen Camilla and waved to well-wishers. Over the weekend, King Charles thanked the nation for their overwhelming support in his first public message since the diagnosis announcement. Now, we've been talking about where we want to move to if we're not going to be in the UK. Because
yeah, we're talking about high
capital
tax and crime.
And high tax.
And the crime hotspots in the country are Birmingham was in 3rd place, Bradford in 2nd place, and Preston, number 1 crime hotspot. Yeah. And incidentally, this was in the whole of Europe. Britain doesn't feature, you know, you took it the first 17 places or so, and Britain doesn't feature. Then the last 3 all belong to England.
It's pretty stark, isn't it? Well, Jane says they've retired to Cyprus, been there for 12 years in a little village called Killy, up in the hills. They absolutely love it. They've just returned from a visit to the UK, actually, yesterday, and they said the UK is just so stressful. And Darren says he now lives in Perth, Western Australia. I can safely say I'd run out of patience with Britain. The crime, the politics and the weather all serve to encourage me to make the move down under.
I mean, the weather, I know there's extreme weather too, but the greyness, the length of the greyness and the dullness and it is depressing.
It's a bit miserable, isn't it?
It is a bit miserable, unlike Jonathan Vaughtry, but his forecast may be miserable.
Hello there, good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vaughtry here with your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. Quite a changeable week of weather ahead of us, but we start with low pressure situated to the north of the UK. Wind circling in an anti-clockwise direction around that means we feed in some quite cool polar air from the northwest. That air is also streaming in some showers. They'll be most frequent today across northwestern districts, heavy around at times, even falling as sleet and snow over higher ground areas of Scotland, Northern Ireland, the Pennines as well. If you're further towards the east and the south, though, you're more likely to stay dry. A decent number of sunny intervals during the day. Temperatures around 6 to 11 degrees Celsius, but feeling quite cold along coasts in the northwest where we have some blustery winds around, and they'll transfer their way northwards as we head throughout the night. Some gales around coastal areas of Scotland over time. Some organised bands of showers just pushing their way across the country during tonight, but there will be clear intervals in between all of that, and underneath those starry skies, temperatures will drop off a touch. Low single figures for many of our towns and cities. A patchy frost possible in rural spots, maybe some icy stretches in a few areas as well. But for many areas away from Scotland, we start off a fine day on Tuesday. A lot of sunshine in there as well, but we are going to see the cloud thickening from the southwest. Outbreaks of rain arriving into southwest England, Wales, Northern Ireland later on as well. Turning windier as well, but they are coming from a southwesterly direction, which is feeding in some milder air. So double digits possible in the southwest, single figures elsewhere, but that milder air is going to push its way across all areas of the UK as we head towards Wednesday. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
It's not too bad, it's looking mild.
No, and it gets better because here comes the Great British Giveaway. The full details.
Yep, coming up now.
No, £18,000.
Oh, sorry, £18,000. Tax-free cash.
Like I'm going through the fine print, you know?
The fine print.
And
it's tax-free, £18,000.
£1,500 a month.
That's
it? Yeah, it works out.
It's not too bad, is it?
Yeah, it's
you
not
can get
too bad at all.
And here's how.
Time is ticking on your chance to win £18,000 in tax-free cash. That's like having an extra £1,500 each month for the next year. Listen to the moment we told Phil from West Yorkshire he'd won our last Great British Giveaway.
Hello? Phil, I've got some really good news for you. You're the winner of the Great British Giveaway.
You're joking. That's brilliant news.
For another chance to win £18,000 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB02 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 23rd of February. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Good luck.
Now, up next to the programme, that 18 grand could provide a nice deposit for your ad.
I was thinking that.
Yeah, or it could pay your rent for 6 months.
Probably not many months now.
No,
yeah.
no. Certainly over a year. And what we're doing next is we're talking about property, to buy or not to buy. There's been a debate about this over the weekend, and we're taking it a step further. Do you rent or do you own your property? If you had the chance to do it differently, and you could, what would you do? This is Breakfast on GB News. Eamonn Holmes and Ellie Costello.
Hi, Rishi here. As Prime Minister, I'm focused on delivering your priorities. So tonight, I'll be on the road to join GB News for a special People's Forum, where I'll be taking questions from a live audience about the issues that really matter to you: the economy, immigration, the NHS. See you there.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK.
Here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Marnie says being sexy in business is entirely possible and maybe even better.
Well, Marnie, this is something I say is true. I've had to live with this for quite a long time, and I think you can. I think you can do both. Now, tell me, it's lovely to see you first of all.
Thank you for having me.
In all your gorgeousness. And you're telling me that that often is regarded as something derogatory or something to hold you back. Is that right?
It's just this really unfair thing, this really unfair narrative that women can't do both. Even men can do it. As you know, Eamonn, you can do it. You can do it all. And I just think, you know, women are so multifaceted. They can be mothers, they can be sexy, they can be businesswomen, they can be silly, they can be all these different dimensions. And this press push that we have to limit ourselves to one category, it's just unfair.
But do you think that is where some people may be wrong-footed or go wrong to underestimate you?
Exactly. There is that saying, disarm with charm. So, you know, that there is that idea that people do look at someone who cares about how they look, who's perhaps a bit feminine, and underestimate them. But hopefully I've proved that wasn't the case in the boardroom.
And thank goodness for Karen Brady. She's definitely upped the glam stakes on the show. And if anybody can prove that you can be sexy and successful in business, I suppose it's her, really. But where do you think most of the criticism comes from? Because I have to say, hard to believe, but when I was younger, I certainly got a bit of this at my old employer, being told that I had to dress a certain way, not to be too sexy, which I found hugely
I would just point out, you were told this by women.
I was told this by a female boss who didn't like me wearing zips on the back of my dress. Not just me, but some of the other presenters there. And I took such offence. I felt like she thought that I was some sort of, I don't know what. Do you take offence when people are criticising you that, you know, in some way they think you're, I don't know?
There's just no right answer. And as we said, I think Karen Brady is doing an excellent job at leading the charge that you can be glamorous and get the job done.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Conservatives need to restore young people's dreams of a roof over their heads, according to the Housing Secretary Michael Gove, in comments that he made over the weekend. And that got us thinking.
Yes, we're asking this morning, what is the best thing for young people to do? To rent or to buy? That is the question. Or to buy or not to buy? That's an even better question.
Yeah.
Should you try to get on the property ladder, or is renting better? So we're going to put that now to property expert Richard Blanco, who believes that renting is better, while property expert Russell Quirk believes that buying is the way to go.
Morning, gentlemen. Russell, I just want to know the buying thing, right? I get it. Traditionally, we're told if you can afford, do it. But when you look at things like the stamp duty, when you look at the solicitor's fees, when you look at the estate agent costs, does it still come out as the right thing to do?
I think overall it does. I mean, look, you're right. There are certain barriers to entry. I mean, you know, a 5% deposit now on the average house purchase price is about £15,000. Although that said, the government, in their infinite wisdom, of course, have done a number of things to help, for instance, first-time buyers. So first-time buyers don't pay stamp duty up to a purchase price of £400,000. So I think and actually the statistics say that the proportion of first-time buyers as a percentage of overall buyers is pretty much at an all-time high. So more than 50% of buyers in 2023 were first-time buyers. So I think the news and kind of the hype that first-time buyers are struggling to buy and can't get their foot on the first rung of the property ladder, statistically actually doesn't seem to be true.
OK, why are you resistant to that, Richard? Why have you got your doubts?
Well, I mean, you know, buying is great if you can get the deposit. It can take an average of 10 years, of course, to build up a deposit. According to Hampton South, a 15% deposit can take you 10 years. Also, of course, renting provides you with that flexibility. The entry costs are much lower. And what I'm concerned about is the government is over-prioritising home ownership, I think. 19% of the population rent in the private rented sector. And it's really important that we enable that sector to be a vibrant one, to continue to grow. What the government's doing is disincentivizing landlords with punitive taxation. And, you know, I think the government is doing that at its peril. We also need to increase social housing, of course. And, you know, that has declined over the last decade. And, you know, I'd like to see the government put more investment into that.
I mean, Russell, a big issue with all of this is the shortage of housing and people not being able to find the housing that they actually want to buy. I mean, we do have a shortage of homes in this country.
Well, we do. So it was a bit of a surprise to see Michael Gove on the Sunday shows yesterday talking about how, look, shock horror, if they don't provide as a government enough homes to allow people to buy, then that will have an adverse effect on young people's view on democracy. And I'm sitting there scratching my head, Eddie, thinking, aren't you the housing secretary? Haven't you been in government for 14 years? So, in other words, any housing issues, any shortage of housing, surely lands very firmly and squarely in the lap of this government and indeed Michael Gove. So it seems a bit odd to hear him kind of dissing his own record, really. But look, I think back to the home ownership benefits.
But just before you do, why are we not building houses? Why are we not shortening that gap?
Right. I'll tell you exactly why. It's because, rightly or wrongly, we've allowed the top 10 house builders in Britain, so the large PLC house builders, to have a stranglehold on supply of properties being built in this country. So forget the planning system and land availability. Bearing in mind, only about 6% of Britain is actually built on residentially right now. So there's plenty of space, plenty of land to build on. But when you allow all housing supply, including social housing, to be at the behest of the top 10 house builders and their management teams and their shareholders, and look, I don't blame them. I'm not poking the finger at them, Eamonn. But frankly, therefore, when they decide not to build and sell as many houses because perhaps the market's softer, we shouldn't be surprised when, for instance, in the next 12 months, we will only see 150,000 new homes built as opposed to the 300,000 that we knew. The government needs to do more. The trouble is the government doesn't understand the property market. It knows nothing about housing. Frankly, politicians have got to get out of the way and stop meddling in housing by way of making political headlines and actually leave it up to some experts to get some houses built.
Rich, I can see you nodding along there. I'm sure you're going to have a thought on that one. But I did want to ask you on the buy or not to buy question. The UK is a bit of an outlier, isn't it? When you look across Europe and countries like France and Switzerland and Germany, where people do predominantly rent, it's not really a question of whether they want to buy their homes, that they would just rent as a culture. Do you think that we need to have more of a European model when it comes to living in a home?
I really do. I think, the big problem we have is we have a shortage of privately rented properties, and that means that rents have been pushed up. It also means that people end up renting low quality accommodation because there's such a shortage. What we need is a situation where we've got slightly too much property to rent so that people genuinely have a choice, and then, they wouldn't fear being evicted on no fault Section 21 evictions, for example, because there'd be plenty of alternatives for them to go to. The problem is the constraints on supply, and that's been brought about by government policy.
And do you practice what you preach, Richard? Do you rent?
No, I don't. No, I actually, I my own place. But I did rent for many years. I rented as a student, and I enjoyed it, and it worked well.
Yeah.
But there's no doubt that it's a lot harder to rent at the moment. We all heard that statistic from Rightmove a couple of months ago that there were 25 people looking for each property, and that's not a sustainable position. Fortunately, it's getting a bit easier at the moment, but without the reform in taxation, and we're seeing a lot of landlords selling up at the moment, things are not going to get much better.
OK, well, look, you both raise a lot of interesting points. I'm not sure we've settled the debate, but certainly you've aired a lot of things for people to think about. Richard Russell, appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, let us know what you think about that one. gbviews@gbnews.com. Now, coming up, Paul Coit has all your latest sports news on the Kansas City Chiefs, who won the Super Bowl last night for the second time in a row.
They did, and also I feel like I should be a bookie here because I'm trying to work out what the best odds were, either betting on Arsenal winning 6-0 away at West Ham or Absolute Steel winning the 235 at Exeter yesterday.
Absolute Steel?
Absolute Steel, and you'd be a very rich man.
Where was Steel spelled?
It is double E, but it should be with an A.
Gotcha. OK, back after this.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Patrick Christie's Tonight. Weekdays from 9 p.m.
Former First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has made her much-anticipated appearance before the Scottish COVID inquiry today. It comes after allegations emerged that she deleted key pandemic WhatsApp messages, used the pandemic to push her own political agenda. Let's just cast our mind back, shall we, to August 2021, when Sturgeon was asked if she'd hand over all her WhatsApps to the inquiry. Here we go.
I think if you understand statutory public inquiries, you would know that even if I wasn't prepared to give that assurance, which for the avoidance of doubt I am, then I wouldn't have the ability. This will be a judge-led statutory public inquiry.
Which, for the avoidance of doubt, I am. OK. Well, you weren't, were you? But fast forward to today, and she was much less forthcoming.
WhatsApp messages between yourself and Mr Yusuf and Ms Lloyd were produced by you. Where did you get them?
They were provided to me through the Scottish Government.
But did you delete them?
Yes.
Did you consider yourself, against that background and your considerable ministerial experience, to be precisely the right First Minister for the job?
No, that's not how I would have thought of it at all. There's a large part of me wishes that I hadn't been.
All right, then. I'm joined now by Tory MP Lee Anderson. Lee, are those just crocodile tears?
Well, it looks like crocodile tears to me, Patrick. I mean, first we had the missing camper van. Nobody knows where that is. Now we've got this nonsense. We've got these burner phones, dodgy £5 phones from wherever they bought them from, WhatsApp messages going missing. It all looks a little bit dodgy to me. I mean, she's bleating on there, she's crying on screen. This is not cutting no ice. You know, it's crocodile tears. It makes you wonder what the SNPs are all about, Patrick. It looks... I mean, the people that have burner phones, let's be clear, people that have these dodgy phones where you can't trace them and disappearing WhatsApp messages, these are normally criminals, these are drug dealers, and you know what? These SNPs are no better than criminals.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Oh, we're already having a giggle in here. It's time to go through all the latest sports news with Paul Coit.
I was explaining the cultural reference or meaning of the Irish phrase, he hangs his fiddle at the door, which means that you're entertaining until you're at home.
Yes.
I like that.
I take my fiddle in with me.
You've always got your fiddle on.
Actually, no, my fiddle's at home, but I'll leave it at the door when I come in here. That's the problem.
My mother, that was my mother's way of putting my father down.
That is a great phrase.
Yeah, you hang your fiddle at the door, don't you?
And does he go, it was like this straight afterwards?
My father was an incredibly funny man, really lovely man, and that was the real put down for him.
Yeah.
Fiddle at the door. That was it.
I like
okay, my friend.
Super Bowl, shall we? A little Super Bowl?
Am I just alone in not being... I know I'm supposed to act all enthusiastic about this, but I honestly find it such... It's got razzmatazz and sparkle.
Yes.
Simply because, Ellie, it's such a boring sport.
And it's slow.
It's slow.
Is it not?
See, this is
he loves it. Look.
This is difficult for me to be involved in because I'm supposed to be the sports person on this show, but... I'm with you, you know what I mean? I mean, for crying out loud. I mean, I've got friends that absolutely adore the NFL. And I love so many sports, but I'll watch it. But for me, you know what they do? I'll tell you what I noticed yesterday. The way they treat the Super Bowl was like we used to treat the FA Cup. And I wish we would do that.
Well, I was saying earlier, could we not import the entertainment factor at half-time or before or after, whatever, at the FA Cup?
But you know what football fans are like? We're all like this.
But
they'll be like,
around the world.
God, we can't have her. What's just coming out doing half-time and all this razzmatazz? That's not what we have in our game.
It'd be massive in the Philippines. Do you think, like, if you know, Jimmy Tarbuck will go down well?
Jimmy Tarbuck coming out, telling a few gags. He's out there, take my mother-in-law, someone please. Everybody's like screaming, you know what? It is changing. Football is changing over here. But as far as the game is concerned, you know, it's a lot of people love it. It really is a Marmite thing, and I hate that phrase, but it is.
American football.
It is. It is. Kansas City Chiefs, anyway, they win again. They're calling them a dynasty, or they'd call it a dynasty over there. They beat the San Francisco 49ers. 25-22. It's their 3rd Super Bowl in 5 years. So it's a huge event.
And it sounds like Eamonn's relations. The Patrick Mahomes.
Patrick
and
Mahomes.
Mahomes.
Patrick Mahomes. The great. They're saying that his name's I mean, his cojones, Mahomes. So Mahomes is, they're saying, the greatest quarterback now that there's ever been. And the second greatest Holmes of all time, but the greatest quarterback of all time.
So Arsenal, West Ham, 6-0 win to Arsenal, amazing. Aston Villa, Man United, late winner from United, 2-1 to them. Let's go to horse racing.
Let's do horse racing.
Stan Shepherd.
Now, the 235 at Exeter yesterday, I love... basically a long price winner. This is the longest price winner that there's been in this country since 1990. Absolute Steel is the name of the horse. There's Absolute Steel coming up the front. I've always wanted to do that. So Absolute Steel in the lead, 200 to 1.
Brilliant.
Holding off a late challenge. Now, the one that's coming up behind there is the hot favourite, Lowry's Bar, who is 4 to 9 favourite, which means for every 9 you put on...
He's 9 to 4.
No, 4 to 9, because for every 9... Well, it's 4 to 9 on.
Yes.
Because for every 9 you put on, you get 4 back. If you were 9 to 4, then I think I'm going to do tic-tac with you. It's 4 to 9 favourite. But anyway, 200 to 1. So basically, if you put a quid on...
Absolute Steel, no doubt about that.
200 quid. Yes,
200 quid.
Absolutely.
Very good. A quid on, you get 200 quid back.
That's not bad, is it?
Right.
Phoenix Open?
Oh, yeah, the Phoenix Open. This is golf we're talking about.
Oh, my goodness me, the Phoenix Open. The Phoenix Open. We talk about what it's like for the razzmatazz, but golf often seen as a bit boring. But the Phoenix Open in Scottsdale, they go bananas. They drink, they have a party hole, which is the 16.
Rowdy and uncouth.
It's more than rowdy and uncouth. We've got a little, I think we've got a little something from this. A lot of the golfers were getting upset. Now, these are the fans.
Is that a woman?
No, it's a man. It's a man. It's a very well-endowed gentleman. There we are. There's another one. This is on the course. So everybody's drinking. Everybody's going crazy. Look at this. This is... Oh, my goodness.
Where did you get those pictures of me?
This is... Look at him. I can't believe it. Oh, bloody, only rolled down about 2 yards.
Blah, 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 blah.
Oh, dear. That's... You know what that is, Eamonn? That's the Americans for you, is what it is. I mean, look at that. It's outrageous.
Being allowed.
And can you imagine this at the Open here?
I don't like
the Royal and Ancient. Look at that. Chugging beer. The whole thing, it started off, it was fun, but is now getting completely out of control. Everybody's unhappy. The golfers can't stand. Look at this.
Oh, they're literally getting carried away.
They are literally getting carried away. It's an absolute... mess.
If you're listening on the radio, probably best you didn't have visuals of that one.
Yes.
Topless,
very large
men.
A lot of moves involved there.
A lot of moves there. Lots of beer, lots of moves.
Yes,
Thank you very much indeed. On the subject of moves, Biggins is here next.
Oh, no, he won't be in now.
Oh, he will.
He won't.
He will.
I'll have to smooth it over with him.
Mood brothers, we are. OK, and he's here reviewing the papers with Don Leeson right after this.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Welcome to the show. Superb stuff, great footage. So you're right in the thick of it there. What's the mood on the ground?
Well, I've left there now. I've actually now come to that EU Council summit that I was talking about. It's still pretty chaotic. The entire city of Brussels has been completely clogged with these tractors, sort of 3 abreast in most of the roads across the city. The people of Brussels aren't particularly happy. I mean, this is sort of reminiscent for some people of the Just Stop Oil protests, you know, people gluing themselves. People are unable to get to hospital appointments, and there's a lot of upset about the destruction that's happening on the streets of Brussels today. But on the other side, there's also the protests, which the farmers are saying that EU green laws simply are not able to fit with what they need to do to keep their businesses going. And just before the protests happened, we saw the European Commission actually make some concessions to the farmers' protests. And this is on the demands that were put on them to set aside somewhere in the region of 5% of their land for regrowing for biodiversity. A lot of the farmers have said that's not possible, and the European Commission has said that they can delay that coming in. So they have won a small concession with these protests.
And Jack, there's a feeling as well, a huge dissatisfaction that the European Union has managed to find 50 billion euros in aid to send to Ukraine, and yet farmers in particular are on the receiving end of net zero targets, taxation on diesel and endless red tape. So many farmers, Jack, saying they're measuring ditches to see if they have to drain them or not. There are minimum requirements on the width of battery hen enclosures, endless red tape. As Jeremy Clarkson pointed out in Clarkson's farm in Britain, they've simply had enough and they're shouting, Ursula von der Leyen, we are here.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Christopher and Dawn, and they've got what is making the pages of the papers today. Good morning to you, Dawn. Let's talk about the Daily Mail, page 4. Senior Conservatives yesterday urged Rishi Sunak to swallow his pride and get Boris Johnson back into the band.
Back Boris. This was a brilliant interview that our very own Camilla Tominey did with our Kwasi Kwarteng. And also Michael Gove said the same thing, that basically at the moment Boris Johnson's personality was what won 2019 with that red wall.
OK, well, let's see what was said. Here we go.
If you want somebody's help, you should reach out to them.
Yes.
That's what you would do.
Yes.
If you were in a difficult spot and you wanted a friend to help you or somebody to help you, you would probably pick up the phone.
Well, he might not want to admit that he needs
well,
the
there's
help
all of
from
that
his
ego.
former nemesis.
There's all of that ego and nonsense. It's not time simply to more of the same.
No.
Something has to change for us to have a chance of winning, and if that means swallowing some pride and suppressing a bit of ego and reaching out to someone who's an approved campaigner, then he should do that.
He's not wrong, but at what price would you bring Boris Johnson back?
Well, this is the problem. I mean, but I think what has prompted this as well is we've got the by-elections coming up. There was a focus group carried out for the Wellingborough by-election, and it really pointed in the direction that the Tories need the help of Boris Johnson. Among the members of this focus group, all of whom back Tories under Boris Johnson, none of them back the Tories under Rishi Sunak. And it's interesting that despite all the problems that people seem to have with Boris, there is still this hardcore of Conservative voters who think he can do no wrong.
But to be fair to him, he is an election winner, isn't he?
But he has no grasp of detail. He's a self-publicist. Ukraine being the perfect example of that. He hasn't got a handle on detail. Northern Ireland being the perfect example of that. And I just would he want to come back?
Well, this is the thing. I mean, Boris is earning a lot of money at the moment. I mean, we know he's got his newspaper column in the Daily Mail. He's earning a lot of money. But there was this also curious story at the weekend, wasn't it? Sort of like basically sources close to Boris Johnson saying all Rishi has to do is pick up the phone. That was the implication there.
But they do seem to be desperately hoping for someone to come into the fold, because in the Times this morning they're talking about our very own Nigel Farage and how he could join the Tories and really help them out.
Well, exactly, because it's winning over the right side of the Conservative Party, the red wall vote, who voted in 2019 on the strength of the whole Brexit, Boris Johnson
Let's
thing.
go to a potential voter and see what his views are on this. Could you see yourself voting for a Conservative government with Boris Johnson in it? Or Nigel Farage?
Oh, is this to me?
This is to you.
You are the would-be voter.
I thought you were talking to someone on the line. Right, I would prefer Nigel Farage.
Would you?
Yeah, I would, because I like Nigel. And the trouble is that all these politicians, they're all egotistical to a degree. And you don't know what they're thinking. Why do they want to be Prime Minister? I would think that anyone in their right mind would not want to be Prime Minister of any country at this particular moment. Because I think disaster is around the corner.
Even worse than it is now.
Even worse than it is now.
The thing is, that's what I think, actually. I mean, the by-election panels also have no love for Keir Starmer and Labour either.
No.
They are completely homeless voters.
Yeah.
And I think, going back to what you were saying, Eamonn, I think Rishi Sunak at least has an attention to detail and does do the detail, but he doesn't have the bluster and personality of Boris Johnson. What you need is some sort of weird offspring of the two.
A little hybrid.
You do. I mean,
Farage and Boris, that would be interesting.
Because at the end of the day, we do like to have a personality in that role.
People like personality in politics.
Yeah, they do. They do, because they feel they can, look at them and think, well, this is what I want.
Well, talking about personality, front page of the Times, front page of the Daily Telegraph, and front page of a few others as well. Nicole Scherzinger, who plays the part of Norma Desmond on the West End, Biggins.
And was absolutely superb.
You've seen it?
I saw it, yes. And she is wonderful, and I'm pleased to say she's going to go to America, where she'll become a big star in America. She is absolutely wonderful, and thankfully she won an award last night.
This is for Sunset Boulevard.
Yes, Sunset Boulevard, which the original production was fantastic, great show, very much a theatrical event with great sets. I remember now the huge staircase they had, which she walked down. This is simplistic beyond measure. There's nothing. There's no set. They are so clever with what they do on camera.
So what draws your attention if there's no set as such?
Well, because it's the most brilliant production, and starring this girl and a wonderful cast around her. I mean, it is fantastic. There's a scene at the beginning of Act 2, which I won't say because I wouldn't want to spoil it for anyone, but it is spectacular.
I saw and I heard on radio this morning a debate about the price of tickets for theatre productions in the West End, which can be 250 quid a time.
Yeah.
But Biggins, you would think worth paying for this?
Well, listen, it's very difficult for me to say because I'm very lucky to go to press nights where I don't pay.
Yes.
And I don't know whether I would pay £250. In fact, I know I wouldn't.
It is. I mean, with the last theatre show, we had very, very average seats. It was Dear England, which is brilliant, by the way.
Wonderful.
But how's it spent £95 each?
Still a lot.
By the time that was a very basic.
100 quid plus a meal at 100
yeah,
quid.
Absolutely.
And drinks in the interval.
It was just, I mean, I don't know how people can afford it. And,
No.
and I'm not going to mention how expensive football is now, because I know where that's going to go, so I'm not going to do that. But football's expensive now as well, isn't it, Eamonn?
But it's not 250 quid.
No,
for your
I know.
Seat or,
no, but it can
anything.
be 90 quid. I mean, to go to West Ham and sit in a fairly good seat yesterday, that was another £90 for one seat.
It does alienate people, doesn't it, from the theatre and from culture, really. You just can't afford it.
No,
you can't
it
have
really
food on
does,
the table. You
yes.
certainly can't go to the
But
theatre.
who's going to see it then? Somebody's paying it.
Yeah, I was going to say, these shows are sold out. You can't get a seat for a lot. You couldn't get a seat for Sunset Boulevard, certainly, and they were completely sold out for the run.
Maybe they're a big tourism thing. Maybe if you're from China or whatever, you go to London and you have to see a production in the West End. Maybe
well, I suppose Plaza Suites, you see, which is on with two big American stars, that is been extended.
Yeah.
And the seats there are £300, I think, some of them, yes.
Unbelievable.
They're not all £300.
Well, do you know what? This leads us very nicely, because in about half an hour's time, we're going to have a debate about this. Has the theatre got too expensive? So don't miss that. Thank you very much, Dawn and Biggins. Really good to see you. You're back with us in the next hour. Do let us know what you think about that one. gbviews@gbnews.com. But first, let's get the weather update, shall we, with Jonathan Vaughtry.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vaughtry here with your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. Quite a changeable week of weather ahead of us, but we start with low pressure situated to the north of the UK. Wind circling in an anti-clockwise direction around that means we feed in some quite cool polar air from the northwest. That air is also streaming in some showers. They'll be most frequent today across northwestern districts, heavy around at times, even falling as sleet and snow over higher ground areas of Scotland, Northern Ireland, the Pennines as well. If you're further towards the east and the south, though, you're more likely to stay dry, a decent number of sunny intervals during the day, temperatures around 6 to 11 degrees Celsius, but feeling quite cold along coasts in the northwest where we have some blustery winds around, and they'll transfer their way northwards as we head throughout the night, some gales around coastal areas of Scotland over time. Some organised bands of showers just pushing their way across the country during tonight, but there will be clear intervals in between all of that, and underneath those starry skies, temperatures will drop off a touch, low single figures for many of our towns and cities, a patchy frost possible in rural spots, maybe some icy stretches in a few areas as well. But for many areas away from Scotland, we start off a fine day on Tuesday. A lot of sunshine in there as well, but we are going to see the cloud thickening from the southwest, outbreaks of rain arriving into southwest England, Wales, Northern Ireland later on as well. Turning windier as well, but they are coming from a southwesterly direction, which is feeding in some milder air. So double digits possible in the southwest, single figures elsewhere, but that milder air is going to push its way across all areas of the UK as we head towards Wednesday. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Farage, Monday to Thursday from 7 p.m.
Lots of people have different ideas, but principally a conservative approach to getting growth is to reduce taxes so that people, ordinary people and businesses can spend more of their own money to invest and grow the economy.
So the theory is that you cut taxes and that then pumps more money into the economy.
Exactly right.
Growth.
And then people, you know, it's not government that are creating wealth. It's individuals, businessmen, companies that create wealth. It's the private sector that creates wealth, that the public sector then taxes and spends.
I get the theory, but one of the criticisms of you, and I think one of the criticisms actually of all political parties, is they appear to be incapable of cutting government spending.
That's the key. I mean, and I think when I look back, is that we should have had a credible plan to reduce the increase in spending. Now, that's often a difficult concept to explain.
But it's in line with inflation, etc.
That's all right. So when you're slowing the increase, it means, you know, one year you spend £100 and the next year you spend maybe £101 as opposed to going up to £110. So the actual level isn't going down, but you're slowing the increase. And that's very much what I tried to do. And actually, looking back, the one thing I wish I'd done, was to present a credible spending plan at the same time as the tax cuts that we announced.
You had a go, it didn't work out for whatever reason, and that analysis will go on for some years to come. We have Jeremy Hunt there as Chancellor now, hinting quite strongly now there won't be any tax cuts, but the truth of it is, under 14 years of Conservatives, for a variety of reasons, the tax burden has risen to the highest since the Attlee government way back in
80 years,
1951, whatever it is.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Eight o'clock is the time. Very good to see you. Eamonn and Ellie here. This is Breakfast on GB News.
Being out of date.
The election starting gun is to be fired tonight here on GB News with the People's Forum, answered by the Prime Minister. Those questions coming directly from you.
That's right, I'm here in County Durham. What would you ask the PM at the People's Forum? It starts tonight. It'll be dramatic.
2 more Israeli hostages rescued in Gaza overnight as Israel prepares for an imminent offensive in Rafah.
Question for you. Has a night out to the theatre become too expensive? We're going to be debating that in just a moment.
And in the sport, Kansas City Chiefs win the Super Bowl for the second year running. And how about this? The Australian swimmer who's going to try and break the world 50-metre record whilst on performance-enhancing drugs.
It's a chilly start to the week, but with some sunshine around to compensate. How long will the sunshine last for? Join me later for the week ahead details.
So this swimmer thing and performance-enhancing drugs, this is allowed?
Well, they're going to have their own games where, because they're fed up with people go, oh, are they, aren't they? Just say, well, you know what? You're free to do whatever you like.
Yeah.
So the Australian swimmer's been given $1 million to try and break the 50 metres world record. And I think the words were, and I'm going to be juiced up to the eyeballs, which surely is not safe. I mean, for crying out loud. But Mark Foster is going to come and join us and talk about it, see what he thinks.
Are you on anything performance-enhancing?
Well, how do you think my performance has been?
Excellent today.
Very good.
Excellent.
Really?
Above normal.
Well, 7 coffees already. Does that class as performance-enhancing drugs? I think it does.
That seems OK.
OK, fine. And 7 bars of
Isabel
chocolate.
goes a bit mad. She has coffee and doesn't drink anything else, and then she goes...
I was like a turkey. I was like... Ellie's clean as a whistle, though, aren't you?
Well, I'm on coffee and tea.
OK,
Not
in the
both.
same cup.
No shakes yet.
Okay.
Not yet, though.
Thank you, my friend. See you in about 15, 20 minutes' time. 2 minutes now past the hour of 8 o'clock. It'll be the first big election event of the year. 8 o'clock tonight here on GB News. We are hosting a special People's Forum with the Prime Minister.
Yes, Rishi Sunak will join our very own Stephen Dixon and take questions from you in our audience on everything from the NHS, the economy and immigration.
OK, what can you expect to hear then? Joining us now, our political editor, Christopher Hope, who's in a state of excitement. They're ready to get underway. What are you expecting, Chris?
Well, the PM has asked for questions on GB News the past week. He did say those 3 things Ellie said there, the economy, immigration, the NHS and anything else. And it's those 2 words at the end which do pose some sort of jeopardy for the PM, because the audience tonight in County Durham will be asking whatever they want to ask. They've been selected by Survation. They are balanced for the UK population on voting intention, and it's up to them what they ask. They'll queue up at a microphone and ask the PM anything. And as we know, in live TV, anything can happen, and we're not sure what they'll ask him, how he'll respond. The Number 10 clearly think that by putting the PM out there, getting him to answer questions from people, not from pesky journalists like us, they might get the real Sunak might emerge, and that might help him in the polls. We'll wait and see.
We certainly will. And let's hope that Rishi Sunak's head is in the game this evening, because we're seeing the Rwanda bill again in the House of Lords this afternoon. That could be a real headache for him, couldn't it?
Yeah, it could be. I mean, there were 2 sittings tonight and Wednesday, and they'll go very, very late, probably later than the Super Bowl finished early this morning, into the wee small hours. We know so far, don't we, that the issue of small boats hasn't gone away. 124 migrants came across on February the 10th, 47 on February the 8th. Already we have amendments going down. The Joint Human Rights Committee says this bill is fundamentally incompatible with UK human rights obligations. We know the Church is upset about it. What we are expecting by Wednesday, by Thursday, which is going to be a double by-election day, don't forget, for this bill to re-emerge from the House of Lords heavily watered down, and then it's back on the Commons to try and put it back to where it was, where it is now, which some critics say isn't even strong enough to work. So it's a pressure on Mr. Sunak. We know he can't hit his NHS target as he planned, set out last year, but the small boats flights taking off, that's his big hope.
OK, Christopher Hope there for us in County Durham. Thank you very much indeed.
Let's turn our attention to the Middle East now, where tensions are escalating, warnings growing against an Israeli invasion of Rafah.
Well, overnight, Israel launched a special forces operation which freed 2 Israeli hostages in Rafah. Well, local health officials say 37 people were killed and dozens others were wounded in the southern Gaza city.
This comes after British MPs warned an Israeli invasion of the southern city of Rafah, would be catastrophic for civilians.
Well, let's speak now to journalist Yotam Confino, who joins us live now from Israel. And Yotam, what's your reaction to what we're seeing or about to see happen in Rafah?
Well, first of all, like you said, it is a waiting disaster. Unless these 1.3 million civilians can somehow be evacuated to other areas in Gaza, that will be more safe. They won't be good places to go because northern Gaza, for example, is in rubbles. Central Gaza is also not safe. So there aren't really any good places for them to go, which means that, like you said, it will be a disaster one way or another. But what we can't forget is that Israel expects that most of the remaining 134 hostages are in southern Gaza, and particularly in Rafah, which means that this operation, this war, cannot end if Israel does not go in there and at least try to get them out, either by force or in a deal with Hamas. We saw 2 of them rescued yesterday or last night from Rafah. And Israel will, of course, continue to try and locate these remaining hostages, 50 of whom, by the way, are presumed dead, according to American media. So it's an impossible situation, and we knew this was coming. Rafah is another Hamas stronghold. It's impossible to win the war against Hamas if you don't eradicate them from Rafah. So it's an impossible situation, one way or another.
It sounds impossible also, Jatim, to rescue the remaining 75. I mean, one wonders how they actually go about that without giving Hamas warning that they're coming.
Exactly. What we saw last night was a spectacular rescue operation, really. Both the army and special forces, everyone really came together to get these 2 hostages out, which were guarded by Hamas terrorists, but apparently they were in a civilian apartment. Now, this is just one of 2 successful rescue operations since the beginning of the war. We've seen failed operations where hostages were killed. Hostages have apparently also been killed in Israeli airstrikes. So to assume that the remaining, 74 hostages can come out alive, I think is still naive. Of course, this is really good news that 2 of them were brought out alive, but the remaining hostages, some of whom are deep underground, I don't think they'll come out unless there is a deal between Hamas and Israel. And there are still significant gaps remaining between Hamas and Israel right now. Hamas would like to, of course, continue to rule Gaza. They would like to have more aid in. They would like to have Israel withdraw completely from Gaza. And Israel will, of course, not accept that. So unless one part compromises, there will be no hostage deal.
And could there be a deal between Israel and the rest of the world over what else they're doing in Gaza? Because they don't seem to be listening to any influences in the world.
They're listening to the United States. I think we have to remember that from the beginning of the war, Israel's initial stance on Gaza was that there would be no electricity, no water, no food coming into Gaza whatsoever. Now, all of that has, of course, significantly changed. There's more aid coming in now than at any point during the war, and this is only due to U.S. pressure. Now, the United States is pressuring Israel to withhold this offensive in Rafah. They are constantly telling them, you need to wait until as many civilians as possible are safe. So there's a constant kind of power battle between Netanyahu, the prime minister, and Joe Biden, because Joe Biden is obviously under a lot of pressure at home because of his support for Israel. But I don't think that you will see an international pressure resulting in Israel saying, all right, we won't go into Rafah, despite the hostages being there. Only a hostage deal can prevent Israel from going into Rafah.
And Netanyahu's under pressure at home as well, I'm sure, to get those hostages back home safe. And then he's also got the international pressures of great concern about an operation in Rafah. It must be quite a difficult balance for him to strike.
Yeah, one can only really speculate how a 73-year-old man who's been in power for so long can really withstand this pressure. It's enormous. It's more pressure than he's been under in his entire career. And that's not to say, that's not to put it mildly, really. He is obviously under pressure, not only because Israelis are demonstrating all across the country, they're sleeping outside of his house, they're calling for his ouster, the polls are against him, but also because the world is starting to turn against him. The world is starting to see that Netanyahu is obviously trying to stay in power. He's doing everything he can to politically survive this disaster. And he's been criticized for not compromising on this hostage deal, that he's simply not allowing Hamas to win this game, which can sound a bit morbid in a way, because of course he shouldn't allow Hamas to win. That's not the point. The point is that if you want these hostages out, you can't have it both ways. Total victory is an illusion. He continues to repeat this total victory goal, which is to eradicate Hamas and get all the hostages out. Now, those two things are impossible. You need to compromise on one of those two goals.
Jonathan Confino, thank you very much indeed. Appreciate it. Here's what else is happening news-wise with the time at 11 minutes past 8.
The government is set to block bonuses paid to water bosses whose firms pollute rivers, lakes and seas. The move comes after public anger at bosses pocketing more than £26 million in bonuses, benefits and incentives over the last 4 years. The proposed ban by regulator Ofwat could apply to CEOs and all executive board members.
The family of murdered teenager Brianna Ghey held a vigil last night to mark the first anniversary of her death. Flowers, candles and paintings of Brianna were laid nearby, with many people wearing pink in tribute to her. Her mother Esther was amongst members of the community gathering to speak and pay their respects.
And the King has attended church in Sandringham for the first time since his cancer diagnosis. His Majesty walked alongside Queen Camilla and waved to well-wishers. Over the weekend, King Charles thanked the nation for their overwhelming support in his first public message since the diagnosis announcement.
Well, talking about going to church, that leads us to the people of the Bibby Stockholm in Portland, and they're calling on the government to take religion out of any consideration around asylum claims.
Well, it comes after it was revealed that 1 in 10 residents of the Bibby Stockholm are regularly attending church services and are converting to Christianity in record numbers.
Full story from Jeff Moody.
In an age where attendance at church is at its lowest ever, the Weymouth Baptist Church is bucking the trend. Sunday services are packed with residents from the Bibby Stockholm. Out of the 300 asylum seekers that are currently on board the Bibby Stockholm, around 30 of them, that's 1 in 10, attend church services here at the Weymouth Baptist Church. 6 of them were baptised last weekend alone. A conversion rate that's almost biblical in scale, or a cynical ploy to help their asylum claims. The people of Portland think the latter. Martine Summers is petitioning the government to take issues of religion off the table when it comes to asylum.
We are a multicultural country. We welcome all sorts of religions. It shouldn't be a consideration at all as to what religion they are.
Father David Palmer is a Catholic priest. He thinks it's wrong to blame the church for these conversions.
I mean, ultimately, the Home Office is their job. It's not the job of the church to say, we think this person should or shouldn't stay in this country.
In a statement, Weymouth Baptist Church told GB News nearly all the men with whom we have contact became Christians in their native countries, all of which are known to be hostile to the Christian faith. It is in no one's interests to have bogus baptisms, for such baptisms would compromise the integrity of the church, would discredit the gospel we preach, and worse, would dishonour the name of Christ. But GB News has learned that some residents of the Bibby Stockholm have been told their asylum claims are unlikely to be successful, and Portlander Martine Summers believes this could be dangerous.
Some of these men may have to go back to their own country whereby Christianity is persecuted. So is the Christian church happy that effectively they could be sending these men back to persecution? They could possibly have blood on their hands.
It's a complex issue. Dr. Gavin Ashenden is an Anglican bishop and former chaplain to the late Queen.
The problem then develops when the state decides that becoming a Christian or the criteria of religion is going to be instrumental in asylum claims and immigration claims. But having done that, it doesn't take the trouble to work out what becoming a Christian means or how you can test that.
In last week's PMQs, Tory MP Tim Lawton launched an attack on the Archbishop of Canterbury.
Can I ask the Prime Minister, given that the Church of England has now issued secret guidance for clergy supporting asylum applications for these Damascene conversions, who is the Church accountable to, and are taxpayers being scammed by the Archbishop?
The Archbishop has hit back, saying it's the job of the government to protect our borders and of the courts to judge asylum cases. The Church is called to love, mercy and do justice. 3 bodies, 3 distinct roles. The Home Office now says it will launch an investigation into those roles. Meanwhile, the residents of the Bibby Stockholm find themselves in the eye of yet another storm. Jeff Moody, GB News.
Well, thanks, Jeff Moody, for that report. Do let us know what you think about that story, gbviews@gbnews.com. But for now, let's get your weather update with Jonathan Vaughtry.
Hello there, good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vaughtry here with your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. Quite a changeable week of weather ahead of us, but we start with low pressure situated to the north of the UK. Wind circling in an anti-clockwise direction around that means we feed in some quite cool polar air from the northwest. That air is also streaming in some showers. They'll be most frequent today across northwestern districts, heavy around at times, even falling as sleet and snow over high ground areas of Scotland, Northern Ireland, the Pennines as well. If you're further towards the east and the south, though, you're more likely to stay dry, a decent number of sunny intervals during the day, temperatures around 6 to 11 degrees Celsius, but feeling quite cold along coasts in the northwest where we have some blustery winds around, and they'll transfer their way northwards as we head throughout the night, some gales around coastal areas of Scotland over time. Some organised bands of showers just pushing their way across the country during tonight, but there will be clear intervals in between all of that, and underneath those starry skies, temperatures will drop off a touch, low single figures for many of our towns and cities, a patchy frost possible in rural spots, maybe some icy stretches in a few areas as well. But for many areas away from Scotland, we start off a fine day on Tuesday. A lot of sunshine in there as well, but we are going to see the cloud thickening from the southwest, outbreaks of rain arriving into southwest England, Wales, Northern Ireland later on as well. Turning windier as well, but they are coming from a southwesterly direction, which is feeding in some milder air. So double digits possible in the southwest, single figures elsewhere, but that milder air is going to push its way across all areas of the UK as we head towards Wednesday. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jonathan. What would you do with an extra £1,500 every month for a whole year?
Well, you could win that in our Great British Giveaway. An incredible £18,000 cash is up for grabs, so make sure you don't miss your chance to win it. Here's how.
There's an incredible £18,000 in cash to be won in the latest Great British Giveaway. Totally tax-free cash that you could do whatever you like with. That works out to be an extra £1,500 to play with each month for a whole year. Money to make each month just that little bit better. You could put it towards monthly treats, save it for a rainy day, or just use it to take the pressure off in 2024. But hurry, for another chance to win £18,000 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB02 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 23rd of February. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Good luck.
Now, we're talking about competitions. We have got a very interesting one coming up next. So Paul Coit, Paul's not in it, but he's talking about it. He's talking to Mark Foster, the British swimmer. And it's about, you know, there's so much controversy about being drugged and taking enhancement drugs and all this sort of thing. So anyway, they're talking about a swimming competition which says, fine, drug yourself up to the eyeballs. Everybody's got the same limitations on them or no limitations on them. And have a go. Will it happen? What will it be like? Previewing that next.
Hi, Rishi here. As Prime Minister, I'm focused on delivering your priorities. So tonight, I'll be on the road to join GB News for a special People's Forum, where I'll be taking questions from a live audience about the issues that really matter to you. The economy, immigration, the NHS. See you there.
every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Britain's Newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
When you listen to Nigel Farage's assessment there, do you feel that maybe this is as good as it was going to get, given that we had the pandemic and it was inevitably always going to be a bit of a mixed bag?
Well, I think it's a bit of a poor excuse from Nigel there that they haven't done it properly. The facts are, Nigel, that it's not worked. It's not going to work. Yes, we will rejoin. I mean, are we better off for it? Are they...
Can I jump in there, Charlie? We're going to rejoin under which government? Because Labour aren't going to do that, unless you don't think...
But I mean, it's going to be unavoidable not to join, because I think it's getting worse and worse for us. I mean, let me just say this. Are the NHS better because we're out of Europe? No, they're not, because they're not employing more staff. Is the building trade better off? No. Is travelling abroad or to the EU or staying in the EU, are we better off? No. Are we better off because foods rise because of the EU? No. Are we better off with imports and export? No, because they're taking longer. The overall result is that we're not better off. The killer point here is 57% of the public will now vote to remain. 33% would leave. Surely that's the telling point.
It depends on the pollster, Charlie, because we were talking to a very good pollster earlier who said there's no enthusiasm for any change in a year. Maybe 10 years, they might be thinking about it.
Belinda de Lucia, let's bring you in. I'm sure you want to react to what Charlie said.
I mean, who would have thought that the UK wanting to run its own affairs and making our politicians more accountable would be so revolutionary? EU Parliament voted a majority to get rid of the vetoes, the last remaining scraps of democracy that the EU had. Now, luckily for EU citizens at the moment, you know, it means a treaty change to actually go forward. But that is the mood. The ever closer union. We have dodged a federalised, globalist, international, power-gobbling, anti-democratic organisation, and that's worth more than a few trade and travel perks for a few wealthy people in this country.
Hear, hear. Belinda de Lucia, Charlie Mullins, great to see you both.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No, it's quite interesting. We're going to talk about a sports competition with a difference where you can be, I think the technical term is juiced up. Here's Ball Coit, all juiced, ready to go.
All juiced.
Juiced up to the eyeballs.
This is an interesting one. It's called the Enhanced Games, and it was being talked about, God, this is quite a few months ago. And the idea is that no athletes in the Enhanced Games will be drug tested. So it's basically saying do whatever you want, because other events, you don't know who is, you don't know who isn't. So listen, we've got James Magnuson here now. This is James Magnuson. James Magnuson, former he was a world champion, also Olympic gold medalist, and he said, Australian swimmer, that he's happy to be juiced up to the gills, because if he does compete in this, he could win $1 million if he breaks the 50-metre world record. So this is James Magnuson here. We don't have James Magnuson for the moment.
You can
we can do better.
Apparently we're told it's coming back. I don't know, it went out the window, but here it is again. Here it is.
32 years old, I haven't got kids, so I have to take that into consideration, and I have to do this meticulously to make sure that I'm not affecting my body for the rest of my life. $1 million is nice in 2024, but what does that mean when I'm 60, 70, 80 years of age? So I want to do this with the best doctors and medical professionals in the world to make sure that I'm doing it safely and properly, and this can be a case study for future athletes. Is there a way to be faster, higher, stronger, safely, without it having negative impacts?
The challenge, that's the interesting thing. This man you see now, there's Mark Foster. Very good to see you, Mark, swimming champion. And indeed, Mark, Paul tells me that you used to hold this 50 metres world record.
It was great.
I did.
I did. I broke it. Yeah, I broke the 50 freestyle and 50 butterfly world record eight times.
Right, sorry, give me your time.
And I was not juiced up.
Yes, made that point immediately.
Give me your time again. What was your time on that?
She lives in went 21.13 seconds.
Right. Well, how, if anybody was juiced up, how much could they expect to shave off that?
I seriously don't know, because I think historically I've always liked to look at the sport and think you're up against everybody's clean. It's a level playing field. I might be slightly naive, slightly stupid, because historically we've found that there's been lots of people that have, not lots, a few, only in swimming in terms, only a few people that have been done for doping. You look at things like cycling, the Tour de France historically, and they were probably all juiced up for a period of time. So you might want to ask them their thoughts on how much it aided their performance. But let's say the world record now, 50 freestyle long course, is 20.91 seconds. And that was in an enhanced suit when we went through the suit wars, the swimsuit wars. So that was enhanced in its own way. So I don't know, because I don't know what drugs are available. I don't know how much difference they'll make. But you know, would I like to see it go to 17 seconds and go, wow, that's what's possible by cheating? Or once the barriers are taken away, would that be cheating? For now, it's cheating, and I think probably. If you took the world's best swimmer at the moment, the fastest swimmer, Florent Manadou, Caleb Dressel, Ben Brown, they could probably go a second faster with a bit of help. I don't know is the honest answer, though.
What do you think about the actual games themselves? Because we talk about the world record. Probably, if Eamonn was on that, I reckon you'd probably break the world record as well.
No, there is a problem.
Oh, OK.
I can't swim.
No, I know. Even so, I still think there's a chance. Seriously, though, Mark, what do you think about these enhanced games? Surely this is just some crazy idea that someone thinks they're going to make loads of money out and everybody's going to be interested, but really, it's a nonsense, isn't it?
They are. Well, let's look at James Magnuson first of all. Would he do it if there wasn't $1 million up for grabs, or 1.5 million Australian dollars? I think the answer would be no. I don't think he wanted to put his body through that. I don't like the idea of it, because I think it's always with anything, how far people will push the boundary and how many people will die trying to push the boundary. I think what James said there, if he's going to do it, the smart thing is he gets doctors and people to sort of map the way out for him and do it as safely as possible, because he says what's going to happen when he's 60, 80 years of age. I don't know. What I like the idea of is the IOC has had a monopoly of the Olympics for centuries, and I love the Olympics. I went to 5 Olympics. I love it. If it's to produce another competition that competes against the Olympics, or hopefully, there's another big event out there, I kind of get that. If it's looking at what we can do medically and use from sport and the findings we find to help other people with other illnesses, to do with, I don't know, dementia, to do with multiple sclerosis, I don't know, other things where it could help, then I think that's a good thing. But ultimately, where we are at the moment, no, I just think it's a bad thing, because I just think people will try and take more and more and more, because we know that's what human beings do, and I think a lot of people will get a lot of problems.
Because the thing is, Eamonn, as well, we've seen that, and I'm not going to mention names, but there have been athletes who have been suspected to have been on performance-enhancing drugs that have died young, that it's affected things, and this is obviously not safe, because obviously, Mark, you would have raced against people you would have assumed had been taking illegal drugs, surely, in the past.
Well, I always got on the block and thought innocent until proven guilty. But people you're looking at there, and I'm not saying these people were definitely taking stuff, but Flojo went 10.5, I think, for the 100 metres on the track. She died very, very early. You then got Ben Johnson, what he did for a period of time. Lance Armstrong. So there's always been people around that have cheated. I don't know, I always stepped in the block and thought, this is a level playing field. Obviously, I'm also not stupid and naive to think that no one ever did anything, but I couldn't have that thought in my head because I'd give them an advantage. But you look back to, in the 80s, East Germany and West Germany were split, 88 Olympic Games. East German women, I think, won 12 out of 13 events. Yep. 4 years later, it's East and West together, and I don't think they won one. They might have won one. So it just shows you when the walls come down and people are not taking enhancement, what a difference it makes. China historically in swimming had a massive thing in the 90s, 94 World Championships, the same on the women's side. It's always been there, it's just how we eradicate it, or we go, do you know what? Everyone just go in for it and just see what happens. But I just feel for people's health.
Well, my friend, the most impressive thing I've heard this morning is you saying, You took part in 5 Olympic Games. That's what, at least 20 years that man's been involved in. That is some record. Absolutely incredible. Thanks, Mark. Always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Have a nice day.
Yeah, nice artwork as well. Nice.
Thank you very much.
Listen, the other thing that Mark mentioned is about world records. And all you've got to do is just look at previous world records. Some, and especially with women's athletics, have stood for over 30 years. What does that tell you?
That they're impossible to achieve.
Impossible to achieve.
Without enhancement. But he was right about the wall coming down and the lack of records after that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's right.
There we go, my friend. Thank you very much indeed. Interesting, and we will look forward to hearing how that develops.
Yes.
So £1 million.
It's not bad, is it?
Get it.
Not bad.
So when's the offer coming in?
How old's the guy, James? As he was
31, 32?
32.
Yeah. So he said I've kept myself in good shape, but he could be in incredible shape if he does it. I don't like it. I just don't like it.
Bones are hardly formed. That's good. Excellent stuff. Thank you very much indeed. Now, Ellie's got a question for you.
Yes, question this morning is, has a night out to the theatre become too expensive? We're going to be debating that in just a moment. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Ellie.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Camilla Tominey Show. Sunday mornings from 9:30.
We had Grant Shapps on last week. He was talking about how defence spending is now creeping up to 2.25% of GDP. Ben Wallace's predecessor suggested it should be 3%. We hear that we've got the smallest army, I think, since the Napoleonic Wars. Numbers are down. There's a question as to whether we can staff frigates in the Red Sea. Why haven't we sent aircraft carriers? What's your impression of the situation?
Well, I don't think it matters how much you spend, it's how effectively you spend it. And we spend it very ineffectively. We have lots of scandals about defence spending. And I think partly because of the monopoly position of some of our defence suppliers, we don't get good value and we don't get reliability. This latest story in the Telegraph is that HMS Diamond, which is our ship, which is out there defending the Red Sea, doesn't have the capability of firing a missile from the ship to the land, so it can't participate in the attacks on the Houthis. So in order that we can participate in the attacks, we're flying RAF aircraft from Cyprus, which is a very long way away. When I was Defence Secretary, I ordered cruise missiles for our nuclear-powered, but not nuclear-armed submarines. And I think we have 6 or possibly 7 of those. But last autumn, it was reported that 5 of those were out of commission, were not available. We have about 21 aggressive surface ships. So we've got 2 aircraft carriers, then we've got frigates, and we've got destroyers. But at any one time, you can count on about half of those not being available because they're under refit or whatever. So we have a minimal surface fleet now. And for whatever reason, it doesn't seem that we're able to deploy a submarine to the area that can fire cruise missiles. Our 2 aircraft carriers, built at enormous expense, are sitting in Portsmouth.
Which seems to most people ludicrous, at least with what's going on.
It doesn't seem ludicrous to me.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, Fleabag actor Andrew Scott has urged West End theatres to slash the price of their tickets or risk alienating young people.
Or poor people. Currently, the average cost of a West End ticket is
£150.
150 quid.
Average.
That's on average, right? And then theatres in cities such as Liverpool, Sheffield or Milton Keynes sell tickets for over £800.
So-
I don't know who's buying them, but...
No, exactly. Well,
but
people
seriously.
are. People are.
Oh,
So sold out,
would
lots
you?
of them.
Would you?
Well, I did go to Magic Mike at the weekend, which I wouldn't say is culture.
No.
But it is very expensive. That's £100 a ticket.
Yeah.
Can you believe that?
And you know,
Very
if you
expensive.
book through some of these online, they're not online, when they keep sending me junk emails and things.
Like the box office emails, yeah.
Yes, so people who say we've got tickets for this and that, and the prices are absolutely unbelievable. 1,500 quid and all this sort of thing, a lot of nonsense. So, culture, is it too expensive or is the cost justified?
Well, joining us now to debate this is former Apprentice star Ryan Mark Parsons, who says it's not too expensive, and entertainment reporter Hayley Palmer, who says these tickets are unaffordable to many. Good morning to you both.
Ryan, you look, a businessman and you, the apprentice, all that sort of thing.
Yes.
You know everything has got a price, right?
Absolutely.
So how far are theatres pushing it at the moment?
Well, I think it's totally justified right now as it is. As you were saying, the average price, I mean, the average price of expensive tickets is about £141. And I think that is reasonable considering weekly overheads for theatres runs at about £250,000 a week for most West End shows. So I think if you're going to go less than what we're charging right now, you're really going to undermine the talent and the amazing craft that these actors have. I was reading one actor who posted on Twitter, or now X, that he could barely afford to live in London. He's a West End star, he's performing most days. He said he's living in a hole, he's performing a Moulin Rouge. Can't even live in London.
But if I thought the money was going to him, I wouldn't object. But the thing is, Hayley, I don't believe the money is going to him.
I don't think it is, no. And I think it's such a shame because I am a huge stagey person. I absolutely love the theatre. I used to run a theatre school myself. I've always grown up in that world. And for me, I think it's really important that we support theatre. But, you know, for a family of four to go to the theatre for a couple of £100 when you could go on holiday, I just don't think it's okay.
What difference does it make if I say, I'm not going to go to the West End, but actually if it's in Milton Keynes I'll go, or Woking or Belfast or wherever?
That's a good point.
Is it going to be the same show?
Well, I went to my local theatre in Southampton and the prices are still not as high, but they're still very high. So I think it's after the pandemic.
They had Biggins there for Christmas Panther.
We love Biggins, don't we? He was just telling me he has 3 Weetabix, you know.
Only 3?
Yeah.
He's cutting down because he normally has 4. Yeah, it's true.
It's true.
Yeah.
I need to try it myself. But anyway, I want people to support the arts. I really do, especially after the pandemic. But I feel like the prices are just ridiculous. I mean, you've got the Sarah Jessica Parker Plaza Suite. Do you know how much the tickets are for that?
It's a lot, isn't it?
£395.
But I think it's worth it to support the actors.
That's the champagne package, isn't it? So you do get, I hope, at least a glass.
Ellie sold on that.
I mean, look, well, exactly. And there's different ticket options as well. You can go on various websites to get cheap tickets. So if you are a student, you're young, like Andrew Scott was saying, if you're 16 to 25 and you can't afford the ticket prices, then there are lots of options to get cheap tickets. But I don't think what he was saying, to have 2 sale days per week, is a good idea commercially for the theatres because they are so expensive to run.
Are you alienating people from the theatre, though, if you can't afford to go? I mean, poor people, young people, they don't have
I think the only
150 quid.
people who are going are holidaymakers from the USA and China and the sort of thing.
Or very rich people.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's fine. If you can't afford to go to the theatre, you should watch Netflix.
No, that's not fair.
I don't think you should lower ticket prices just because some people can't afford to go. Because I think I mean, actors aren't being paid enough. Imagine, I think theatres will shut down. They suffered so much during the pandemic.
We're lucky
Arts Council England slashed their funding to focus on regional theatre. The West End is being starved of money. So you're suggesting you lower prices. How would they survive?
Well, I think it is being starved of money because I want to know where all the facilities are because I have a problem with my bottom. It gets very sore very quickly.
Poor Eamonn.
Sitting there. So I think there's a lack of air conditioning. There's a lack of
leg room as well. My legs are so long. I've got to sit like this.
You want to go to a fantastic theatre, go to one on a cruise ship. And then you know what a theatre is like.
Oh, really?
Unbelievable.
And even the ice creams are expensive these days, so I like to treat myself in the interval. And I can't even afford that these days.
Yes, yeah.
So it's a shame because I think we should support the arts, I really do. And I don't think we should just go, oh, no, I can't afford it. Because those actors, a lot of them have trained so hard at theatre school. Their parents have put them through theatre school. They're coming out, they're getting jobs. They're not getting the money. It's the big stars that are getting the money.
And the theatre owners.
Yes.
Yes, the people who... But it is a dilemma, Brian. I'm not dismissing your argument at all. But there has to be some sort of compromise found. But if they're still selling out, which they are, it's not as if they're empty seats.
Yeah. Well, I mean, perhaps the solution could be if there's some leftover tickets. I mean, that's the case at the moment. You can go on the day to get cheaper tickets. So if there's any leftover tickets, that is something that people who can't afford to go for the full rate could do. But I think suggesting that we reduce the tickets generally in terms of their price, I think is a bad business move, and I think you'll see theatres suffer even more.
And finally, could I ask the both of you, is there anything happening that you would recommend people to spend their last 10 bob on?
Well, I'm going to see Pretty Women tonight because it's Valentine's week.
Yeah.
And that, for me, is just magical. So go and see Pretty Women at the New Wimbledon Theatre.
OK.
Back to the Future, I saw that a couple of weeks ago. Really, really good. I recommend going to that. Ben Joyce as well, I kind of know him. He's very good. Okay. And Amber Davis in Dancing on Ice, she was on the show, exactly, from Love Island.
Very, very good.
It's a very good show.
May you both stay awake. That's good, Jess, having had such...
Thank you very much.
Both of you.
Brian Mark Parsons, thank you very much indeed, and Hayley Palmer, thank you.
Thank you, Eamonn,
Lovely
very
to see
much.
Thank you.
And do let us know what you think about that. Has the theatre got too expensive? Have you gone recently? Let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.com. Do get in touch.
Biggins and Dawn Neeson, next.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Elon Musk has announced that the first patients to receive a groundbreaking brain implant from Neuralink is recovering well.
This is all a bit odd. The product, called telepathy, uses a robot to surgically place a computer chip in a region of the brain that controls movement.
Yes, Elon Musk says that the first goal is to enable people to control a phone or a computer just by thinking. He says that initial tests show promising signs of brain activity, meaning that patients with paralysis could one day overcome their conditions.
Not sure about this one. Joining us to discuss this breakthrough is applied futurist Tom Cheesewright. Tom, this sounds, well, slightly terrifying.
I certainly think a lot of people will be thinking this is something out of a sci-fi horror rather than reality. But this is a technology that's been a long time coming. We've been developing direct brain-computer interfaces for a long time, mostly for the sort of therapeutic reasons that are the initial goal, at least, of Elon Musk's Neuralink, to allow people who are perhaps quadriplegic to have direct control via their brains of initially a smartphone and maybe ultimately artificial limbs or a wheelchair.
It does seem fascinating how quickly this technology is moving on. I saw demonstrations perhaps a year or two ago of people playing a very simple Pong game just by thinking, moving sort of one line on a screen up and down. This seems like potentially there has been a breakthrough that means far more complex things can be controlled just by thinking.
Well, there's lots of different aspects to this technology. The initial attempts to interface with the brain used actually quite thick prongs almost that went into the brain, and they were quite solid, and so if the brain moved, they could potentially cause damage.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Time is 8:44. Welcome back. Joining us to go through what's making the news this morning is Christopher Biggins and Dawn Neeson. And Christopher Biggins, should we start with the King's wave of hope? which is on the front page of many of the papers.
Yes,
it's good to see him looking so well.
It is, and I tell you what, I think he's marvellous what he's doing. I mean, he's doing very well, and he's publicised it. And I think he said that he's thankful to everybody who's been in touch, sending messages of goodwill, and you'll get through this. But I think he's highlighting what it is that he has, or showing the public that even he can cope with it. And giving faith to everybody else who is in this terrible situation. I mean, cancer is a terrible, terrible thing, which we still have masses of.
Just an awful blooming disease, really.
It is. It is.
Talk about coping, not coping with a situation. A young girl, a 6-year-old Palestinian girl, whose last phone call was shared with the world, has now been found dead.
It is so sad, this story. I mean, she begged, save me, and they couldn't get to her in time before her and her family, her cousins, her aunt and uncle, and even the people who were trying to find her to save her, all were killed.
The ambulance crew.
I know, it's just awful. How can this go on?
Well, we know this is going. We know that thousands of children are dying. But it's when you get one personal story of this little girl and that last phone call where she's begging for help that just really brings it home, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like, you need that personal story rather than the figures. It's just horrific.
And you hear that voice and you just imagine what she went through.
Just 6. I mean, how do you even cope?
Just 6 years old. Just awful.
Dawn, the Times are carrying a story today, and they talk about NHS staff. Now, the proportion of NHS staff who are not UK nationals has hit a record high.
It has, indeed.
1 in 5, 20%.
Yes, indeed. Majority are Indian, Filipino, Nigerian and Irish. We just have, as we know, I mean, the NHS is in crisis and we don't have enough people.
But sorry, I don't see how that says the NHS in crisis. It just says that 1 in 5 of the staff are not...
Because we're not recruiting... With the crisis is we're not recruiting enough people in this country and we're not retaining enough people. What is so wrong with the NHS that the workforce isn't being retained? We know that we have nurses and doctors who are offered better careers in places like Australia and New Zealand, and they go to... and Canada is another one. They go to... What is so wrong with the NHS that we can't retain the staff that you and I, the taxpayer, pay to train up, that they have to go elsewhere? There is something going horribly wrong, and we're cutting back. Immigration is a huge problem facing both political parties, the main political parties, and mass immigration, and people are concerned about that, but we need this immigration because otherwise the NHS and the care system in particular is going to fall apart. Something's got to give.
No, it's...
But the thing is, do you know of anyone who undertakes a career in the NHS? You see, I think you've got to make these jobs, even if they're not attractive, seem attractive, and they should be attractive, Dawn. They should be paid a proper rate to make them attractive.
This is the problem. This is the problem. And in particular, the care structure, because this comes under the NHS umbrella as well. We do not respect people that work in that industry. And if we improve the care system, we paid carers who do an incredible job what they should be paid, then it was sort of like, but we don't. Instead, we pay managers £200,000, diversity managers in the NHS, rather than paying the people on the front line who are actually looking after our health, the nurses, the care system in particular.
I always felt, though, that people didn't care what they earned in that job because they were doing it because it was a wonderful job to do.
Yeah, but it's a vocation, but you want to put food on the table.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, and they should be paid a lot more than they are. And I agree totally with what you've been saying. But it is a problem because, there is this feeling that they are there doing a job which is terribly important. And if they go on strike, people will die.
Well, and we have junior doctor strike going on 24th to 28th of February, so after the strike earlier this month as well.
Yeah. Do you think there's a glimmer of hope in that they could come to a deal before then? They said they'd be open to getting back round the table before.
Well, that's a good question for Rishi tonight on the People's Forum.
Yes.
Certainly is. Christopher Biggin, should we look at something totally different here? Bagpuss, turning 50.
I know, and the son of Bagpuss co-creator Oliver Postgate is saying that the BBC were wrong to axe this popular children's series after the first series of just 13 episodes.
What, did they then return to it, or they're only 13?
They must have, because there were a lot more than 13 episodes. And
well, either that or they just repeat the same ones over and over.
Well, that's true, but I think they must have gone to another company, I think. It doesn't say that. But it was, in 1999, a poll by the BBC voted it the all-time favourite children's programme.
Ellie just went, did you ever watch Bagpuss, Ellie?
Yeah, well, I don't know if I've ever watched it, but it's certainly
You're
familiar
aware
to
of
me.
it.
I'm aware of it.
Yeah.
I wasn't that keen on it.
No, I mean, we didn't like it, did we, Pickens?
No.
Did you not?
No.
Sorry.
Partly due to the fact you were 27 at the time. When that's probably why.
That's true.
Yes.
I've never been keen on pussy.
No, I'm sure.
Bagpuss.
But there are. I remember in my day we had Watch with Mother, and there was the wooden tops, and there was Andy Pandy. Couldn't stand Andy.
No, I hated Andy Pandy.
What's the point of Andy Pandy?
I couldn't agree more.
What is an Andy Pandy?
What is an Andy Pandy? Nothing to do with us.
Loopy Loo.
Loopy Loo, I quite liked.
Yes.
We had Rosie and Jim. You know Rosie and Jim?
What are you doing?
They lived on a narrow boat, and they were a bit creepy, to be honest with you.
I'm afraid I love Blue Peter, you see. We were talking about that earlier. I mean, Blue Peter was
good,
just
It's
wonderful.
Rosie and Jim.
This is Rosie and Jim, and they lived on a narrow boat.
No, I never liked them either.
Well, I mean, if you think they were creepy, did you ever catch up on the Clangers? What was that about?
Yeah.
What drugs were you on?
Whistle.
Are they the mice?
No.
No,
Well, they were sort of like...
They lived in craters on the moon.
Yeah, they were sort of with a soup dragon.
What drug were they on?
A good one was called Tales of the Riverbank.
Oh, with Ratty.
Yeah.
And Molly.
And so they were all real animals that Johnny Morris did the voices to.
Yeah, I love Johnny Morris. God, he was fantastic.
And the Wombles. That was a good
Dawn,
one.
you want to talk to us about some real animals here, seals.
This is lovely. There's some lovely pictures to go with this story, which I really hope we've got. Nature finds a way. It's a great line from Jurassic Park. This is a grey seal colony has been established itself at a former Cold War weapons testing site on the Suffolk coast. More than 130 grey seal pups have been born at Orford Nest, which is a remote shingle spit. It's great up there. It's beautiful. This breeding season alone. And it used to be...
Oh, they're so cute.
They are.
Oh, they're
cute.
adorable.
Absolutely. Look at that. Look! But it used to be a weapons testing site, and so it just goes to show that goodness can come out of something that's frankly quite scary. Look at that one; that's so sweet. If you're listening on the radio, that's a cute, fluffy white seal pup rolling around on a beach
with
Sweet
mummy or
on a
daddy
Monday
in the
morning.
background.
They look very chill, don't they? They don't move very fast. They just kind of lay back. Well,
I suppose if you were built like that, you wouldn't move very fast, would you?
I suppose that's a very good point. Yeah, the big lumps, aren't
There is,
they? Really?
there's no chance.
Big lumps.
There's no chance of Ellie ever being built like that, is there? Come on.
Neither would you, darling.
It's just a nice story, isn't it?
It is a nice story.
Not so nice for Eric Idle. Eric Idle, who was one of the Monty Python gang, and he wrote the theme music for One Foot in the Grave.
He did, and
I never knew that.
No, he didn't die. What did you
No, I didn't know he wrote One Foot in the Grave, the theme music.
He wrote the music for
Really?
Yeah. Well, this is, I mean, obviously Monty Python. I mean, it's very sad when such a great group of comedy writers and performers fall out. They're all in their 80s now, and Eric Idle, and a series of, frankly, insane tweets, has said that he's basically skint, still having to work for a living at 80, and claiming that the money coming in from the Monty Python back catalogue, which is amazing, it's hardly anything anymore. It says it's a disaster, which is such a shame. It's so sad to read. They've all fallen out with one another for a start, and they're all now complaining about one another.
But none of us get any money from all those years and years ago. I mean, I don't know what he's complaining about.
So porridge on Saturday night.
Yeah,
Are you paid for that?
Yes.
What are you moaning about?
No, let me tell you what I get paid. £14.
£14.
Yeah.
Well, you were very good. You were very good for best £14 spent.
My original fee was £90 an episode, and then when they used to repeat it on BBC One and BBC Two, I used to get over 1,000. But now they repeat it on these strange channels.
Yes.
You get nothing, absolutely
That's been the wage,
nothing.
I think.
What?
It's about minimum wage.
Oh, it's terrible. I mean, I get so angry about it. I don't want to talk about it. I mean, it just drives me mad. But I mean, if you do something in America, my friend B. Arthur, who did Golden Girls, was a multimillionaire. It's through it.
No, don't be jealous. Thank you very much indeed, Biggins and Dawn Leeson. Thank you. Very enjoyable. Here's Jonathan with the weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. Quite a changeable week of weather ahead of us, but we start with low pressure situated to the north of the UK. Wind circling in an anti-clockwise direction around that means we feed in some quite cool polar air from the northwest. That air is also streaming in some showers. They'll be most frequent today across northwestern districts, heavy around at times, even falling as sleet and snow over higher ground areas of Scotland, Northern Ireland, the Pennines as well. If you're further towards the east and the south, though, you're more likely to stay dry, a decent number of sunny intervals during the day, temperatures around 6 to 11 degrees Celsius, but feeling quite cold along coasts in the northwest where we have some blustery winds around, and they'll transfer their way northwards as we head throughout the night, some gales around coastal areas of Scotland over time. Some organised bands of showers just pushing their way across the country during tonight, but there will be clear intervals in between all of that, and underneath those starry skies, temperatures will drop off a touch, low single figures for many of our towns and cities, a patchy frost possible in rural spots, maybe some icy stretches in a few areas as well. But for many areas away from Scotland, we start off a fine day on Tuesday. A lot of sunshine in there as well, but we are going to see the cloud thickening from the southwest, outbreaks of rain arriving into southwest England, Wales, Northern Ireland later on as well. Turning windier as well, but they are coming from a southwesterly direction, which is feeding in some milder air. So double digits possible in the southwest, single figures elsewhere, but that milder air is going to push its way across all areas of the UK as we head towards Wednesday. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
So the highway code was amended recently. Passed me by, but anyway, a new poll suggests this has made no difference to the safety of road users, and I could believe that.
Yeah, there was an awful crash in London, wasn't there? A bus and a pedestrian yesterday.
Fatality.
So we're asking, is the highway code fit for purpose, or should we just scrap it altogether? That's our debate this morning, and we're joined by Danny Kelly. She argues highways are not fit for purpose, and cycling instructor Anna Hughes thinks they are. Good morning to you both.
You see, Anna, I think it's a good thing. I think the highway code is a good thing. I just don't think that any of us pay any attention to it, or we should all be tested on it quite regularly, I would have thought. We should have revision courses in it.
Yeah, I think you just summed it up, Eamonn, by saying the changes passed you by. I actually asked a few of my fellow cyclists and pedestrians, what is classified as vulnerable road users, about this very thing. I said, has the new highway code made things safer for you? And most people said, not at all. Drivers don't know what it is. They don't know what the changes are. They probably don't know what the rules are to start with. And as you've just said, doing refreshers is a really good idea. It's a bit bizarre that we're given a license to operate this quite dangerous machinery, and then we're never tested again, and especially not on the highway code, which is, especially when it changes, why wouldn't we be retested on that or have to do refresher courses on it? You know, there are conflicts on the road, there are fatalities. It makes sense to be aware of what the highway code says, because it is there to keep us safe.
Yeah, and Danny Kelly, when I think back, I think it was 1999 I passed my driving test. Hardly any bikes on the road then, to be honest, probably virtually none.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock on Monday, the 12th of February. This is Breakfast with Eamonn Holmes and Ellie Costello.
Thank you for your company. The election starting gun will be fired tonight here on GB News with the Prime Minister's People's Forum. He will answer questions directly from you.
I'm here in County Durham for the People's Forum. We'll hear from members and viewers for GB News asking the PM their questions. But what will they ask? It's a moment of jeopardy for the PM, but also it might work.
And more trouble for the Rwanda bill today, with questions over human rights obligations as it returns to the House of Lords.
2 more Israeli hostages are rescued in Gaza overnight as Israel prepares for an imminent offensive in Rafah.
A new campaign to fight fraudsters launches today. We spoke with Security Minister Tom Tugendhat earlier.
We say stop, think fraud. What we mean is think about how people are collecting your data and how you're protecting it. You know, are you using the same password for everything? If you are, that's not very safe. Are you using two-factor authentication? Are you making sure, therefore, that there's an extra step? It's not just a password. Are you actually thinking, is this the kind of a site that I should trust, or is it a link that somebody has emailed me, and therefore that I should be more careful about?
It's a chilly start to the week, but with some sunshine around to compensate. How long will the sunshine last for? Join me later for the week ahead details.
We're talking about where we'd go to live if it wasn't the UK, because we're being taxed lots, aren't we? And there's crime
Higher than anybody else. Yeah.
In the UK. Yeah, you were saying, what, the top 3?
Top 3 crime capitals of Europe. For the first 17, they're in France, they're in Italy, they're in Belgium. Then you get to the top 3. In 3rd place, Bradford. In 2nd place, Birmingham. And in 1st place, by a mile, Preston.
Surprising, actually. So we're asking, where would you go? Where would you go to live if it wasn't the UK? Amanda says, a deserted island in the South Pacific. No wars, no politics, no stress, just peace and quiet, sun, sand, and a great suntan.
Yeah, I think I could retire, barefooted, shorts, maybe run a little bar shack on a beach or something.
Oh, that would be
like
good, yeah. Whereabouts? In the South Pacific, would you be there?
Yeah, South Pacific, yeah.
Or Hawaii, we've had that suggested as well. There's some really good ones here. I'm not sure about this one. Ian in St. Petersburg. We're talking about getting away from politics and war and stress. Ian says he moved to Russia 2 years ago, but he says it's full of lovely people, reasonable standard of living, and no rubbish arguments.
Was he told to say
that? Wow. He also mentions it's got a real Christmas because there's real snow.
Yeah. I mean, I've been to a few places in Russia and very nice, and people are nice. You wonder just how much they know. What is being carried out in their name? That's the question.
Well, there's that, yeah. And Vivian says she's lived in Tenerife for 18 years, loves it. Low crime, great weather, and the Spanish are kind to older people, and that's very good, she says.
The Spanish are what? Kind
to older people.
I like that word, kind. Kind to older people.
Kind is a good thing to be.
That's a good way to be.
Especially to our elders.
Yeah, I can't be kind to the film Oppenheimer. I watched that at the weekend. I waited for ages to watch it. Everybody said...
You weren't a fan?
I wasn't. It took me 2 nights to watch it. For a start, it's so long. And secondly, it's all stylistic. You just look at it and they're more worried about what his hat looks like or what his clothes are like or whatever. It went on too long, and I just kept thinking, yes, I understand that,
We get it, move on.
Understand, I'm not stupid.
It's probably one of those ones where his hat represents something, and whether he has it on or not.
It never blew off in the wind. I knew that much. You could see it sticking to his head. That was the thing. But there we go.
Cillian Murphy is the lead in that, isn't he?
Cillian Murphy was.
Was he very good?
I'm sure he was. Sure he was. I just was so bored with the overall plot and the way it was going and whatever. I tell you who was good. I've now forgotten his name. Robert Downey Jr.
Oh, he is very good.
And he doesn't even look like himself in it. So that was, the makeup
I didn't know
on that was
was
stupendous. Maybe, I hope I got that right. I think it was him.
I'm sure you did.
Didn't look like him because it wasn't him. Anyway, 4 minutes past 9. Hello, good morning on this Monday morning. You're starting your day and you're starting your week with Eamonn and Ellie here on Breakfast on GB News.
Yeah, and it's the first big election event of the year tonight. 8 p.m. exactly, GB News are hosting a special People's Forum with the Prime Minister himself.
Rishi Sunak will be joined by Stephen Dixon to take questions from you. You will make up the audience on everything from the NHS, the economy and immigration.
So, to tell us all about it, Christopher Hope joins us live now from County Durham.
That's right, Eamonn and Ellie. Yeah, we don't really know what else they might ask. We're saying those 3 areas. We think that's what they'll be asked about, but frankly, anything might come up. He'll line up in front of the audience here in County Durham. There'll be some microphones. There'll be queues of people to ask questions, selected the audience by Survation to represent voters across the UK. But frankly, anything might come up when they put questions to the Prime Minister. And I think that's maybe the hope of Number 10. They want to try and get the polls motoring in the right direction. They're still 20 points behind Labour. They want to try and show Rishi Sunak for the person he is, the relaxed person he is in private, the passionate person he is about controlling illegal migration and dealing with net migration. So they want to try and get that person out and show him to our viewers and the rest of the country.
Christopher Hope, you're out and about with the public so very often. You also spend a lot of time in Westminster. What do you think are the key issues that are affecting people? What do you think this election is going to be won on? Do you think it is immigration? Do you think it's the economy? Do you think it's the NHS? Or could it be something else entirely?
It is all those 3 issues, no question. The NHS, the spiralling waiting lists, 7 million people waiting for various treatments on the NHS. Small boats, that's in the House of Lords, of course. Today, Monday and Wednesday, the bill will be watered down by peers and go back to MPs. I wonder whether tax might come up. We saw, didn't we, late on Friday, Number 10 published the PM's tax return. He paid tax to maybe around 20% of some sort. Some might argue, why is a millionaire paying just 20% tax? There'll be a reason for that. For that, it's probably paid for capital gain, reasons and other reasons that are too complicated for me to understand. But for many people filling in tax returns, those who are self-employed and the like, they might wonder why the PM pays so little tax. That might be an issue, and also further pressure on why not trying to cut taxes for millions at the election, maybe an IT inheritance tax cut, or maybe lifting those pesky thresholds at which we pay tax, with inflation pushing us above those numbers. And also a big week for the economy. This week might be the week in which we're told that this country is in a technical recession. That means 2 quarters of negative growth, of falling growth. We'll wait and see. But I think, really, frankly, the risk for the PM and his team is anything can come up. We don't know what the questions are. They don't know what the questions are. The only ones who know that are the people asking those questions, and that's why it's a real moment of risk, of jeopardy for the PM, but also, I think, of opportunity for his team.
Christopher, thank you very much indeed. We look forward to seeing you tonight, my friend. Thank you very much indeed. Seeing you at 9:30, it'll be Andrew and Beverly. Britain's newsroom.
No, it won't.
Guys.
Well, it's Pip today, actually.
It's me. Oh, it's you.
Hello. Hi, you two.
I'm very flattered.
Didn't even look round. There you are. Goodness me.
It's a lovely surprise. Andrew and Pip, what have you got coming
Well, we'll
up on
be
the
obviously
programme?
looking ahead to the big forum tonight. Big moment for GB News. Big moment for the Prime Minister. He's got a difficult week, as Chris Hope was alluding to. All sorts of 2 by-elections coming out later in the week, and inflation figures could be tricky.
But, you know, when you listen to Christopher talking there and stuff I was reading today, you wonder why anybody wants to be in charge of this country. I mean, there's so much doom and gloom. I'm talking about the crime index, 17 countries all around Europe, and the top 3, Bradford, Birmingham and Preston. Spots 1, 2 and 3, and tax rates, we get hit on everything: stamp duty, goodness knows, value-added tax, every sort of tax, national insurance.
Well, I suspect people are going to be tackling him on that tonight, Eamonn. And it will be interesting to see what the questions are from people in the North East, because, of course, they're going to be very different from what people would ask in London. And I'm really looking forward to it.
And, of course, it is the famous Red Wall. So see how popular he is. I think it'll be a really testing moment for the Prime Minister.
Well, guys, good luck to you with that. I know you've got plenty to talk about. We've got to talk to Nick Thomas-Symonds now, the Shadow Cabinet Office Minister. Good morning to you, Mr. Thomas-Symonds. Thank you. We were just talking about the Prime Minister in the People's Forum tonight. We're just wondering if that signals the starting gun in a general election campaign.
I think he may have fired the starting gun some time ago, but I hope certainly that it indicates that we get a general election as soon as possible. I hope you'll have the chance this evening to ask him to name even a single public service that's got better and is in a better state since the state the Tories found it in 2010. I hope the Prime Minister does call a general election and get the verdict of the people on his premiership. That's what he should do. It's in his power. He controls the date. My message to him is to get on with it.
Well, we don't know anything until 8 p.m. tonight. We don't even know the questions that are going to be put to the Prime Minister. So we'll make sure we're all watching at 8 p.m. and tuning in for that. Look, wanted to ask you, because your party has been making the front pages of the newspapers today, and not for good reasons, Jewish groups condemning the candidate for the Labour Party in Rochdale. Obviously, the by-election coming up. This is about his comments about Israel, saying that they deliberately allowed the Hamas terrorist attacks of October the 7th, giving them the green light to invade Gaza. This is Azhar Ali, who's the Labour candidate there. Now, he has apologised, but he is still standing as your candidate in Rochdale, and he has the backing of Sir Keir Starmer. Now, that is remarkable with a party that is trying to distance itself from anti-Semitism.
Well, listen, I was completely appalled by the comments when I learned of them. They are completely wrong, they are totally unacceptable, and they do not represent the views of the Labour Party. Councillor Ali has apologised unreservedly. He's retracted those comments. Crucially, too, he understands the gravity, the scale of the offence that's been caused, and wishes to take on what is highly significant, mountainous task of trying to rebuild trust with the Jewish community. I also listen, though, to what very respected colleagues like Dame Louise Eamonn have said, that Councillor Ali has a history of standing with her against anti-Semitic attacks, and that this is out of character, and will now go on to try to rebuild trust with the Jewish community. And it's on that basis that he will be our candidate in the by-election in 2 weeks' time on the 29th of February.
Nick, the government are going to make an announcement today regarding banning bonuses for water bosses who fail to stop pollution. Correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure this is Labour policy. I'm sure I've heard this coming from you guys before. And if so, is that a compliment or an insult?
I think it's welcome that they've adopted our policy on this. I think Labour making the political weather, of course, I'm pleased to see that. But this is an extraordinarily serious matter, and I think the government could go still further. We need that, for example, where there are executives who are persistently involved in the very worst breaches. There should, in our view, be criminal sanctions. And we do also need to have that really strong regime, every single outlet being appropriately monitored for pollution. So, yes, welcome that they've adopted our policy, but they could go further.
Nick Thomas-Symonds, thank you for your time this morning. Nick's the Shadow Cabinet Office Minister, and we should say there are other candidates obviously standing in the Rochdale by-election, and they are
Azhar Ali, as we mentioned, who stands for the Labour Party, Mark Coleman, Independent, Simon Danshuk, Reform UK, Ian Donaldson, Liberal Democrat, Paul Ellison, Conservative, George Galloway, the Workers' Party of Britain, Michael Howarth, Independent, William Howarth, Independent, Guy Otten, Green Party, Ravin Rodent Sobotna, Official Monster Raving Loony Party, and David Tully, who is also an independent.
You're certainly spoilt for choice in that part of the world when it comes to that. So there we go. That's the full lineup. Now, the Great British Giveaway competition. We're getting a great response to it, and why wouldn't we? It's £18,000 up for grabs in the competition, and here's what you've got to do to be in with a chance to win.
Still time to turn 2024 into 2020 more with your chance to win £18,000 in cash to spend however you like. You really could be the next big winner of our Great British Giveaway. Phil from West Yorkshire won our last one. Listen to his reaction when we gave him the news.
I never won a penny in my life.
Well, congratulations, you've won £10,000.
Oh my God, wow.
But hurry, for another chance to win £18,000 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB02 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 23rd of February. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Good luck.
Good luck. Cheer yourself up. Have a go. You never know.
Yeah,
Still
be
to
in it
come.
to win it.
What?
You've got to be in it to win it.
That's right. Angela Levin's a royal biographer, friend of the show. We love talking to her, and she's going to have the latest update on the King's health, the friendship he's forging with Sarah Ferguson as well, and a few more royal things besides right after this.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, weekdays from 9 p.m.
Ken, do you find the Union flag, the Union Jack, divisive?
In some situation, but as Simon quite clearly stated, and I agree with everything that he says in regards that there's situation when people use it for ulterior motive to cause fear, alarm and distress. We saw that with the far right when they came up to saying protecting the Churchill statues and things of that nature. But largely on the large whole, even I wave the St. George's flag on a sporting occasion. And I don't see anything wrong in raising the Union Jack or the St. George's flag so long as the intention is correct. And as he says, Mr. Brockhurst, he served for the country and he should have every right to be proud of what he's done and the way that he wants to display it.
All right, Simon, what do you make of this kind of, I would argue it as like student social media-based politics, where you get these pillocks from the Green Party or whatever saying, oh, it's divisive and I can't believe it. It will be legal in this country to do... Do those people need to get out more? I was on the streets of Stratford earlier on, an incredibly diverse place, speaking to a massive range of people right across different age demographics. I couldn't find a single sausage who said to me that they thought that this guy from the Green Party was right.
He obviously has absolutely no attention from anybody, and this is his way of finding attention. Both Ken and myself, we both agree that nobody should use any symbol of national identity to offend others deliberately, because that's just inflaming a situation. There's so much sensitivity around so many things today, and people do get offended by so much so quickly without any rhyme or reason.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
The King has given his heartfelt thanks in his first statement since being diagnosed with cancer.
Yes, he said he was grateful for the public's kind thoughts that brought him comfort.
Now, this comes as he was seen alongside Queen Camilla attending church in Sandringham yesterday.
Well, joining us now is royal biographer Angela Levin and friend of the programme to tell us more. And Angela, it was so wonderful to see the King looking quite so well, actually, in Sandringham.
Yes, I was absolutely delighted because you don't know whether he would be bedridden or he didn't have the energy to walk very far. And there you saw him. If you didn't know that he'd had cancer and it was published, that you would have thought he was just in the right mood and walking to church as he likes to do every Sunday. So, you know, brave him, really. And Camilla by his side, smiling, probably jerking him into joking, and it's wonderful that she's there, such like a rock. She said she was going to copy the late Prince Philip, and that's what she's doing. She's absolutely there when she's needed.
And, you know, I don't know how really to put this, Angela, but she has been trained up well, hasn't she? Everything leads to this moment, and now that the King's not around for many engagements, she's filling in, she's beginning to fill in. What sort of job do you think she's doing?
Well, I mean, it is absolutely amazing because when I was talking to various people and her for my biography of her, they said that after they were married in 2005, one of the aides said to her, "Would you like to do some charity work?" And she said, "Oh, well, I'm going to the hairdresser tomorrow, and later this week I'm seeing a friend for tea. Perhaps we could leave it for a couple of days." And that is because she was brought up. It wasn't being rude or lazy. She was brought up just to have fun, to read, to ride horses and to have fun. So she had no idea how to do anything like that. But she started with osteopathy, which her mother and grandmother suffered from. And she said that once she started doing charity work, the more she did, the more she wanted to do. And that she felt that the more she, because of her position, then, let alone now, that she could really help people and make a difference. And that's what she's done. What the work she's going to do is to attend as many engagements as possible that King Charles would have done, which is a huge load, but she'll do it with grace. And last week she was driven for 6 hours to go to a charity in a local church. And it was just astonishing that she would do that. The helicopter, the weather was too bad for that. So she would do her absolute best to stand by him. She never wanted to be in the spotlight, and she absolutely disliked giving speeches. But she's learnt all that. And I think it's a marvellous thing that she's done, but also marvellous for older women, that you can change, you can do more, and you can do it with alacrity and dedication.
And we also hear that the King is being bolstered by his friendship with Fergie, who we've seen, even at Christmas, being welcomed back into the fold.
Yes, well, a lot of that was Camilla too, because she doesn't bear grudges. And it was a long, long time. It was mainly the Duke of Edinburgh that couldn't stand her. The Queen liked her and often got her in surreptitiously for tea. But after that, they decided, you know, there's no need to carry on with not allowing her to come, especially her children did. And it was always difficult and awkward for them that their mother wasn't there. So she came, and after she had her, the cancer of the breast, and then she got cancer of the skin. And King Charles wrote to her saying, if anything I can do, please let me help you or support you. And of course, he won't be now moving them from Royal Lodge for a while, which is where they've lived for a very long time, because it's full of leaks and needs redecorating. But he was going to sort of try to get his brother, Prince Andrew, out. But I think now that's quietened down, and quite right too. So Fergie, as we know her, really has written to King Charles saying, supporting him and being kind. And they're writing letters back. And both of them, ironically, have had two different types of cancer, and they can really understand what each of them are going through. And Fergie said, everyone must have hope. You must always have hope. You can't lose your hope because you can win. That's not 100% true, but it's a lovely thing to say. And I think it's very comforting for him and helps somebody who knows what situation you're in because they're in it too.
Angela, we haven't got long with you, less than a minute, but I did want to ask you about the Prince and Princess of Wales, who apparently have been visiting the King, which is just such lovely news to hear.
That's wonderful news that she was well enough. There's photographs of her walking across the grass and with the family, and one of them's holding a big bouquet. And I think that's lovely. And we wish her all the best. You mustn't rush it, but very kind that they want to visit the King so soon after they've arrived into Sandringham.
Yeah, it is so lovely. And it feels like a real family coming together to support.
Yes, you have this hope that Fergie said we've all got to have, and I think that's very nice.
Yes,
good. See you in the studio next week, Angela. Thank you very much indeed for your time today. Much appreciated. That's it from us. We'll see you from 6 again tomorrow morning. Have a good day.
Hello there, good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vaughtry here with your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. Quite a changeable week of weather ahead of us, but we start with low pressure situated to the north of the UK. Wind circling in an anti-clockwise direction around that means we feed in some quite cool polar air from the northwest. That air is also streaming in some showers. They'll be most frequent today across northwestern districts, heavy around at times, even falling as sleet and snow over higher ground areas of Scotland, Northern Ireland, the Pennines as well. If you're further towards the east and the south, though, you're more likely to stay dry, a decent number of sunny intervals during the day, temperatures around 6 to 11 degrees Celsius, but feeling quite cold along coasts in the northwest where we have some blustery winds around, and they'll transfer their way northwards as we head throughout the night, some gales around coastal areas of Scotland over time. Some organised bands of showers just pushing their way across the country during tonight, but there will be clear intervals in between all of that, and underneath those starry skies, temperatures will drop off a touch, low single figures for many of our towns and cities, a patchy frost possible in rural spots, maybe some icy stretches in a few areas as well. But for many areas away from Scotland, we start off a fine day on Tuesday. A lot of sunshine in there as well, but we are going to see the cloud thickening from the southwest, outbreaks of rain arriving into southwest England, Wales, Northern Ireland later on as well. Turning windier as well, but they are coming from a southwesterly direction, which is feeding in some milder air. So double digits possible in the southwest, single figures elsewhere, but that milder air is going to push its way across all areas of the UK as we head towards Wednesday. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
Morning. Pip Thompson with me this morning, Britain's Newsroom. A lot to talk about.
Including Rishi Sunak at that People's Forum in the North East tonight. It's going to be really interesting to find out what people in the North East want to hear from the Prime Minister, because it will be very different from certain other parts of the country, like the capital.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
You have a president in President Biden who's not enforcing the law that was passed by Congress. President Obama, criticize him or not, actually enforced the law and was deporting people that had crossed illegally. Of course, President Trump